well.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Hello, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. I'm here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller, and we are broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, actors are still on strike, including in Nashville, Tennessee. We bring you an update on that. We bring you the Boss Watch, a new regular segment that we are doing every week. UPS has bowed to pressure and is slinking back to the negotiating table with the Teamsters. All that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number and the line is open. That phone number is 844-899-8857. That is 844-899-TVLR. You can also leave us a voicemail throughout the week or send us a text message. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, then you can find us anywhere you find anything online. In particular, you want to go to our website, TVLR.fm, and bookmark that. Sign up for our newsletter so that we can send you notes. Let you know what we're up to. Really good stuff. But we are also, of course, on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube. All of those places, you just got to search for The Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. We absolutely could not be on the air without our listeners that support the show. You can do that at tvlr.fm/donate. You can make a one-time donation, or you can sign up for automatic recurring payments. That way we have a continuous steady stream of revenue. It's really important to keep the show going, and we really appreciate everybody that is already doing that. All 60, 70 of you, pretty cool. Have 60, 70 folks that think the show is good enough to support financially. I will say we've got 1,000 more subscribers on YouTube this month, and as far as I can tell, only 1 or 2 new monthly donors. So let's get those numbers up, folks, if we can. You can also buy our new merch. It's really, really cool. It is the Join a Union or the Boss Will Get You tee. We have redesigned it. We've redesigned it, and I'm showing you a picture on my phone there. See that? It's redesigned, you can tell. And also, it is with a new vendor. If you got the previous Join a Union shirt, then you may still want to check out this one because it is with a new vendor. We think that the material is very much superior. This is the vendor that we used for the Good Things design. It's a lot softer, and we really like it a lot better. And the print. You know, if you got the first Join a Union shirt, the print was kind of like, it was just kind of weird. It was kind of weird. It was kind of shiny. Not sure what the deal with that was. But this is not going to be that way. It's going to be like a normal, kind of graphic tee. So we're really excited about that. You can go to tvlr.fm/store to pre-order that. Pre-orders are going to be open through August. They're going to be open through August. That you should be able to get them by sometime around mid-December, stuff like that.
September.
Sorry. Mid-September, we also got some new stickers. We'll be mailing some of those out this week for people that have ordered. And we do have some of the Good Things shirts left in stock. We got like a couple of mediums, some larges, some extra larges. So check out the store, see the inventory there. Also, if you're a member of a union, then definitely think about getting your local to sponsor the show. We could not do it without our union sponsors.
Absolutely. We really appreciate them. And let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. And I also want to just welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Unclaimed Mysteries Internet Radio, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check it out.
Absolutely. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into our first segment today. We're gearing up to begin Last Week in Southern Labor. We're getting all of that ready. And I think we could begin that segment regularly again as early as next week. So we'll see. Don't hold your breath or anything. But that's kind of what I would like to see. But in the meantime, while we wait to bring that segment back kind of in full force, we did take a look at some of the union elections that we've missed since we've stopped doing that segment in Alabama. And there have been, there have been a good amount. And, that's one of the reasons that we liked that segment, Last Week in Southern Labor, is to show that literally every single week, there's something happening in the labor movement in the South, even if you just narrow it down to people voting in union elections. And then, of course, we know that outside of that, there's even more happening. People are filing grievances every day. People are winning back pay every day. People are getting their jobs back every day. This is something that happens every state in the country and in the South, and that's why we like this segment. Even if it is kind of limited in scope, it's just kind of illustrative of the reality that there's lots happening. Workers are moving, and it's happening everywhere. So
absolutely,
let's take a look at what some people are doing here in the state of Alabama in the last 3 months, 2 or 3 months. The International Brotherhood of Boilermakers, iron ship builders, blacksmiths, forgers, and helpers are working to secure representation of 10 employees at Birmingham Rail and Locomotive Company, according to a June 12 filing. A notice of the election was issued on June 23rd, so we will have to check back for results. As we previously reported on the Valley Labor Report, the Machinists Union attempted to unionize Aerojet Rocketdyne in Huntsville. According to the NLRB, the bargaining unit would have been 102 employees. Unfortunately, the workers did lose that election. In Selma, the CWA won a small shop election 3-1 to represent 4 workers at Alliance Mobile Incorporated. The election was certified on June 21st. As previously reported by Kim Kelly for the Valley Labor Report, the UMWA is facing a decertification attempt at Warrior Met Coal. You can check out her article on our website for more information on that. In April, RWDSU, the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, won 6-1 to represent Sterilite workers at Sterilite of Alabama, LLC, in Birmingham. The United Association of Plumbers and Steamfitters, Local 52, filed to represent workers at Comfort Systems USA Mid-South in Montgomery, but later withdrew that petition. Similarly, UA Local 91 withdrew their petition to represent 18 workers at Blocks in Birmingham. The Valley Labor Report first broke the news of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Local 402 winning a union election to represent nearly 200 school bus drivers in Huntsville. These drivers transport Huntsville City School students, but are employed by a company named First Student Inc., which has a national contract with the Teamsters Union. Drivers voted to unionize with the Teamsters 131-6. International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers filed but then withdrew a petition of representation at Aero Simulation Incorporated in Mobile. And finally, while outside of the NLRB, we wanted to draw attention to a win by the United Steelworkers at Carfair Manufacturing in Anniston. According to their press release, about 60 workers at Carfair Composites Incorporated in Anniston, Alabama, won union representation on February the 6th, with 98% of eligible workers affirming their decision to become members of the United Steelworkers Union. The Carfair workers manufacture fiberglass reinforced polymer components to supply the transportation industry, including for hybrid and electric buses. They chose to join the United Steelworkers to gain a greater voice in decisions that impact their working conditions, wages, and benefits. Carfair, which is a subsidiary of New Flyer Industries, signed a neutrality agreement with the United Steelworkers last April, stating that they would not interfere with the union building process if workers decided they wanted the benefits of collective bargaining. Carfair has 2 facilities in Wisconsin, one in Minnesota, in addition to its Alabama factory. And according to our sources, workers at Carfair in Anniston recently secured a first contract. We've reached out to United Steelworkers to talk to some of the folks involved and learn a little bit more about that contract, and we'll keep you updated there. If we missed something, let us know. Reach out to us, tvlr.fm/contact, if you've got a union story, a labor story in Alabama or the broader South, and we will make sure to put it in our regular roundup about what's going on down here. Here's another regular segment that we're going to be doing, Boss Watch. As we mentioned last week, we want to regularly bring you this segment because every night on the nightly news, you're going to see some poor and working person's mugshot for a crime that they allegedly committed, whether that be theft, trespassing, something like this. Of course, when you get arrested, you have not been convicted. You're innocent until proven guilty, and yet your name and your face are splattered all over the evening news and online, and it has, in fact, impacted people's employment opportunities even when they have been acquitted or charges dropped, right? And so this is something that's happening every day, and yet you don't see the same kind of thing happening to the bosses, who, by the way, it is a fact, steal more from workers than all other property crime combined when you take a look at wage theft, who kill almost as many people as are murdered in this country. Alabama has a homicide rate of 6.2 per 100,000. Our death on the job rate is 5.5 per 100,000. So every time you see a murderer's mugshot, you should be seeing a boss's mugshot in the next segment. But you don't, and that's why we're here. This week, the choice was obvious and tragic. There's no way to segue into this terrible story of a 16-year-old dying on the job in Mississippi. And so before we even get into the details, let's just start. We're going to start by extending our love, our solidarity, and our sympathy to the family. Our labor movement needs to support the family and community however we can. Nobody should ever die on the job, and especially not a child. This young man should have been worried about his grades in school, going to high school sports games, going to prom, making friends, and instead the family has to bury a child. It's just really grievous, and I can't imagine what they're going through. I have somebody in my life just recently died, but it was not on the job. He was a young person, and and the family is still, that family is obviously wrecked. And so I've kind of been able to, see recently the kind of sorrow and grief that a family has to go to when they lose somebody so young. And it's really, really sad. And not one more child should have to die due to this, reckless corporate greed. And yet Republicans across the country are trying to make this exact kind of thing easier.
Right.
So let's talk about it. From NPR, 16-year-old Duvan Robert Thomas Perez died while on the job at the Marjack Poultry Plant in Hattiesburg, Mississippi last Friday. Forest County Deputy Coroner Lisa Clem confirmed the where and when of Perez's death, but said she couldn't release specific details at the request of the family. In a press release obtained by NPR, however, Marjack Poultry said that a sanitation employee in the plant suffered a fatal injury when he, quote, became entangled in one of the machines he was cleaning. According to the statement, the plant immediately notified the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and an investigation was launched with the company's full cooperation. We'll see if that's the case. The statement did not mention Perez by name. Immigrant Alliance for Justice and Equity spokesperson Jess Manriquez told NPR that Perez and his family are indigenous Guatemalans who immigrated approximately 6 years ago. She said that, quote, when workers are put in these conditions that are truly deplorable. We've been hearing from folks on the ground that there is a lot of child labor that is happening at that poultry plant. So there's a lot that needs to be investigated. But right now, we just want to help this family through the process. The company in their statement said, quote, Marjack, Mississippi would never knowingly put any employee, and certainly not a minor, in harm's way. But it appears at this point in the investigation that this individual's age and identity were misrepresented in the paperwork. Really kind of gross stuff, putting the blame on this child when you're a company. And, this kind of, we know that that's a lie, right? We would never put anybody in harm's way. We would never employ a child. That's just, there's no way that you can believe that unless you were literally born yesterday and you have no idea of, the history of poultry plants, the way that they employ people, the conditions that people work in poultry plants. It's kind of, almost insulting to even put that kind of stuff out there, but that's where we are. NPR also notes that this was the third death at the Marjack plant in less than 3 years. According to an open OSHA case, a staff member died as a result of, quote, horseplay in December of 2020. The plant was fined $6,827. The Associated Press reported at the time that Joe Velasco Toto died from, quote, abdominal and pelvic trauma caused by a compressed air injury. Marjack was fined $27,306 for another death in 2021, but the company is contesting those penalties, that death being 28-year-old Bobby Butler in an accident involving heavy machinery. Before those deaths, the Labor Department in 2009, this is from the Washington Post, before those deaths, the Labor Department proposed in 2009 $379,800 in penalties against Marjack after issuing 37 serious safety and health violations. From a statement at that time, quote, Marjack Poultry Management should not wait until a serious injury or death occurs to any of its workers before making the necessary changes to its safety and health program. That company has offices in Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. And like I said at the top, this death of a 16-year-old, of a boy who's in 9th grade. This kid was in 9th grade at his high school working at a poultry plant. This death comes just 2 weeks after another 16-year-old boy died in a workplace accident at a Wisconsin sawmill. Cases like these have reignited criticisms about the use of child labor as Republican lawmakers push to relax child protections despite a surge in high-profile cases involving mostly migrant children working in some of the nation's most dangerous industries, including explicitly making it legal for children to work in dangerous industries such as coal mining. That's one of the things that they want to do. They want to make it legal for children to work in the coal mines again. They also want to, in Arkansas, one of the ways that they were relaxing child labor is negating a previous requirement to have parental consent, to have a parental consent form that the parents have to sign. Who does it help employ children if you have one less piece of paper, one less piece of documentation? I mean, that kind of bill is really better understood as, a child trafficking bill, a bill to lessen enforcement on child trafficking. It's really kind of gross stuff.
Yeah, it is. And like you said, we're seeing it in states all over the country. I know Iowa is having a lot of fights right now. And of course, Iowa has been home to some of these very same issues with child labor in the meatpacking industry. And, we've seen reporting coming out of the New York Times about children working in, state after state, including here in Alabama, where children were, working for Fruit of the Loom, I believe it was. And then we also, of course, have had children working in the Hyundai supply chain, migrant children predominantly, some of the most vulnerable folks in our society. And it's just, another symptom of this neo-gilded age that we're living through. And we thought in the labor movement that child labor was a battle that we had won. We felt like we won that fight many years ago, and here we are going backwards. And it's no coincidence that it's, predominantly migrant children that are being exploited.
Yeah.
And we do have a caller on the line for this.
Well, really quickly, I did want to, I have to mention, because we're a union radio show, and because it is a fact, and before I get into this, it's a fact that union workplaces are more safe. They are safer on average than non-union workplaces, but that's not magic, right? It's not you win a union election and then therefore by some, ephemeral quality of being recognized by the government as a union, then your workplace becomes safer. It requires dedication from the members and the leadership to make that so.
Absolutely.
And
constant vigilance and organizing, ongoing efforts. It has to be a real priority. You have to have activity to make that happen.
And while, of course, this death is mostly on the hands of the corporation, we do have to know.
And the staffing agencies.
And the staffing agencies.
Let's say that, too. And the fact that the corporation even resorts to staffing agencies.
Right. But we do have to note that there is a union at this plant. From what I can tell, it is the UFCW. I'm not totally sure, but I was able to find a case on the NLRB's website. I mean, you can't really, if you Google union at this plant, there's nothing that quickly comes up, but I was able to find an NLRB case from like 1968 involving this facility and the union that represented workers there in the 60s, which was one of the unions that merged to form the UFCW. I think it was like the butchers and cutters union or something, and they merged with somebody. And so by all accounts, it is the UFCW that represents workers at this facility. And I haven't seen any statement from the UFCW on this. And that, that's wild to me. Okay, Adam, you said we had a caller?
Yeah, let's get the caller on the air here. All right. We've got a 256 caller.
Hey, this is Luis. I am an organizer based in the Southeast, and I have had extensive contact with some of our comrades on the ground in Mississippi, and I wanted to let you know what I've heard so that your listeners can kind of get context for what's going on in Mississippi.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so the first thing I'd like to say, again, just as outraged as you are, this is a child. How does this happen? It's the United States of America, right? It's the 21st century. 100 years ago, we had an entire labor movement based around the idea that children should not have to work. They're supposed to protect these kids. And what's more egregious around what's going on in Mississippi is that this is a community that has been ravaged time and time again by these extreme climate disasters, by ice raids, by poverty. So this is insult to injury to the general community of Jackson and Hattiesburg. This child was working because he had to work, right? Because poverty in the system that we live in forced him to help provide for his family. This is not like a choice that some of these children make to have to go to work, right? Number one. Number two, the company knows on the ground. That's what organizers have told me. That's what our contacts with the community have said. Company knows that they are hiring children. They're willingly choosing to hire children, number one. Another piece of context is in 2019, there was an immigration raid that absolutely devastated the entire region. I don't know if you remember, if it was covered on your program or not, but there were about 800 workers in these very poultry plants that are in this general Jackson area that were just, they were flooded with ICE officers, and they arrested 800 people, and they deported lots of people, working class people, laborers that were not part of a union, right? So I'm very grateful that you're making a shout out to the union shop that is at this poultry plant right now, and I would invite all of the unions, all of the folks that are listening that are part of a union, to call the union that is at this shop and ask, why is the president of this union not in Mississippi right now? Why haven't they made any statements, right? A worker died at a union shop. Like, how is this possible? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's incredibly distressing. There was just a giant storm in Mississippi as well a few weeks ago, so the offices of several of the nonprofits have been devastated. So this community, like time and time again, things have happened that just further repress the community. And again, the context being that because of everything that's happened, the local immigrant community, many undocumented folks, don't want to talk to OSHA, don't want to talk to the police because they're afraid, rightfully so, that something is going to happen, you know? So it's a really terrible situation. There's a lot of attention, a lot of media coverage nationally that's descending upon Mississippi. And so I would ask for your listeners to continue to uplift the story, because this is not the first person in the last few years that has died at a factory in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course not. And that's, you know, what you mentioned about the fact that, you know, the families are really in a lot of ways kind of pushed into these circumstances, and that it's important to to rather than criticizing the family for this because of their condition, it's important that we, you know, the company is ultimately liable for this, and the society for, you know, for allowing people to, you know, live in such destitute kind of poverty, even though they're working, even though, you know, in a household like this, it's almost certain that both of the parents were working. He may not have been the only child even working, and yet they felt the need to, you know, to have him work as well. It's just a really, really sad state of affairs when companies like this make so much profits, especially over the course of the pandemic, taking advantage of inflation, and yet their workers are still, you know, making, in some cases, even as low as $8, $9, $10, $11 an hour. And that's just not enough to support a family.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the working conditions themselves at these poultry plants, I've been there myself. I've seen it with my very eyes. They're incredibly dangerous, right? Like, number one, no child should be working in these types of places. It is against the law, right? And it is the company's responsibility to ensure, number one, that no children are working in their factory. Obviously, we've been fighting for it for 100 years. Number two, that the places are safe. People don't have to die in factories. They're not supposed to anyway, right? We are not beholden to this capitalist system to have to sacrifice our children in our bodies for profit, right? The reason that this happened, the singular reason that a child that was 16-year-old, that was an immigrant, he was indigenous, he came to the United States fleeing violence, the reason that he died is because a company was seeking profit and they did not ensure the safety at the factory, period, end stop, right? So what I want your listeners to hear from me and from my tone and from my community is that you need to be incredibly angry at this situation. You need to be enraged that children are working throughout the Southeast, specifically at factories that are dangerous. And secondly, that they're dying, right? Why are there not riots in the streets, right? Children are dying at factories.
Yeah, absolutely. Luis, thanks for the call. Is there anything else that you think folks ought to know about this situation, this community?
Yeah, I would just amplify that there is a union, right, at this shop. I would say, again, it's kind of shameful that they haven't shown up in a meaningful way so far. I don't know what the situation is. I can't speak to the specific union that's there, but I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that the community there has not been touched by that union. And if the union is there, it is the union's responsibility to show up for this community 100%. That's what solidarity means. And if the union isn't doing that work right now, they need to get on it because they're losing a lot of credibility nationally. So please send resources to the organization that you had mentioned earlier because they need a lot of help right now. The
Immigrant Alliance for Justice and Equity.
Exactly, yeah, and I think that you can find the link on their webpage. They're currently trying to organize on the ground and doing really transformational work in that community.
Thanks for the call, Luis. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
With that, we're going to go ahead and go to a break. We're going to be right back with some updates on the writers' strike and more. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and family members are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough even to keep their jobs. We can fix this. It's time for us to find a way to close the health care coverage gap so that people can remain at work. Let's make this a priority. Let's close this gap and cover Alabama. To learn more and how you can help, visit coveralabama.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Attention union members, membership organizations, podcasters, or anyone with a payment processing need. The future is here, and your organization needs to be prepared by working with Unionly. With Unionly, your union or organization can take payments on a mobile device, eliminating processing fees, giving you a better price than other payment processing methods, while at the same time supporting a union-friendly business with a specialized skill set to meet your needs. Your members will thank you when they pay their dues at their convenience without waiting in line to deposit cash or check. Start preparing for the future today by calling 206-595-8631 or visiting unionly.io.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more.
With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
The sign hit the city like a bolt of lightning.
You know the photo. It's iconic. Marches in the streets holding a simple sign with a simple message.
I am a man.
The I Am Story podcast explores the fight that inspired those words, how a group of sanitation workers in Memphis stood up and made history.
They don't see us as men and women.
Go to IamStory.com or wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe.
I'm attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you.
Sinyard Law. And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case.
Sinyard Law. A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We've got a phone number if you want to participate in the show, 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can call in and get where Luis was just a few minutes ago. You can also text the show if you don't want to call, or participate in our chat, where we have lots of folks hanging out and contributing to the conversation. Infinite Content, Hatcher, David, another David, June Buggy, Colin, Zachary, DL Cindero, Infinite Content, Sam, Adam, Ad Visa Master, Shane, Sid. There's a lot of people hanging out and chatting. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. So here's the next story. Before we get to the next story, we wanted to talk a little bit about the show. And like I said at the top of the show, pre-orders are open for the new shirt. It's really cool. You should get it and give us money for it. TVLR.fm/store. And the material is really, really cool.
It's all American made and union labor.
Yeah, 100% and American materials. Sometimes, print shops will be like it's union made, union labor, but the materials are outsourced or whatever. This is 100% American materials, 100% union made. It's really, really cool. The design was something that we did. It was an in-house design with support from a freelance artist that we paid. It's a lot softer than the last one. It's a lot softer, and the graphic is going to be like more normal. Like it's matte, and it's just going to be better. And it's going to have a union bug on it, like we try to have all of our merch has. Like we try to make sure all of our merch has. Also wanted to give a shout out to the Alabama State Building Trades Unions, who invited us to speak at their convention last week. We really appreciate that. Appreciate the opportunity
very much so.
To have a few free meals. And to have a few free meals and just to hang out with some good union folks and talk to them about the work that we are doing here. Hopefully we have some of y'all hanging out with us this morning that we met last week. and hoping to bring on some new sponsors as well as some new guests and stories from those unions. Lots of really cool things are happening in the building trades as well as in all the unions across the state and across the country. And so one of the reasons that we go out and do these talks is, of course, to try to build up support for the show and get more revenue so that we can continue doing what we're doing, but also just to reach out and tell people we're an outlet for working people. And if you have a story that is that's something cool that your union is doing for your members or for your community, or you want to put a boss on blast, we're the place to do that. Also wanted to, let our regular listeners know that, and you may have kind of noticed this, that our audience, especially on YouTube, has really increased a lot. Like I said, just in the last month, we've got 1,000 new subscribers. We have over 100,000 views on YouTube just in the last month. Hundreds of watch hours, really cool. We were just profiled in the local news by WHNT. If you Google WHNT, the Valley Labor Report, you can see our profile there, which is pretty neat. We do have a recurring guest segment on America's Workforce, which is the longest running union radio program in the country. It's been on the radio for 30 years and is a daily talk show in Ohio. They're also on podcasts, as a podcast, and they are in the top 5% of podcasts. So that's really cool.
We've had some great guests lately.
Yeah.
We've had some really cool guests, and really, the growth in the audience, I think, has really taken off with our coverage of the Teamsters negotiations, and I think a lot of Teamsters have, felt comfortable calling in and expressing their opinions, and that's been huge. And the spring things started to really pick up. We had some big guests, Adolph Reed Jr. and Marianne Williamson, who, of course, is running for president, and so those got quite a bit of attention. But a lot of Teamsters are very, very engaged, and just a lot of working people generally are really, curious about what's happening with the Teamsters and UPS, and I think ultimately, supportive of our Teamsters, Ken, and what they're doing and trying to fight for a fair contract. So, we're seeing that audience kind of translate into the Valley Labor Report as well, and I can't say the increased audience is increasing our budget necessarily, which it is quite tight around here these days.
Yes.
Frankly, for being honest, we're not really in a great spot. We have several potential sponsors floating around, some delays in payment, some folks that are kind of on the fence. So we could use a couple more main show sponsors and a couple more sponsors for Shop Talk. Thank you, Labor Notes, for agreeing to be a sponsor there. And we could take sponsors for Overtime as well. But for me, what's perhaps more important is that we grow our individual donor base, because that really, if nothing else, it really means a lot when regular working people chip in a couple bucks at a time. And so those regular contributions, or even just the one-time contributions, it really goes a long way. A high percentage of our established audience already gives, and that does mean a lot, and we notice that and appreciate that. So we do hope some of the new viewers and listeners will consider giving us a few bucks if you can afford it. We do keep all of our stuff free, and it does cost more than free. There are some significant costs associated with the production that we do. So it really only works if the folks that can contribute do contribute. So we do really appreciate that, and we don't take it lightly.
Yeah. We also have one new article on the site, and we're going to have some more coming up, but it is a really cool article. It is interviews with Starbucks workers from Boston who went on the largest strike in Starbucks history. 64 days they were on strike, and so Jane Wong, who has been a longtime supporter of the program and has supported us as a contributing writer in the past few months. She did some interviews with them and gave them a place to tell their story about that, which is really, really cool. So definitely check that out. Go to tvlr.fm. You can read that. Article.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we're just kind of wrapping up some updates for the show, I did want to thank our current sponsors, which is IW 477, the Ironworkers brothers and sisters. We really appreciate y'all. Y'all have been longtime supporters, and we're big fans of what y'all do. But also want to thank attorneys Jack Jacobs and Tommy Senyard.
Jack Jacobs also been long time.
I
think that the Ironworkers and Jack Jacobs, attorney at law, I think that those are the only two sponsors that have been with us literally since the beginning. I think that they were like the first people that were sponsoring the show that have continued on. We've had some people come on and come off and come on again, but those two sponsors we're really grateful for, and they have been continuous sponsors the whole time. So that's really,
absolutely.
really cool.
Really appreciate them alongside IFPTE, AFGE, LIUNA, UAW, RWDSU, IBEW 558, Labor Nodes, and Unionly. So really appreciate all those sponsors. And last update is that we have a live show in the works this September featuring some special guests. It's going to be a fun show. It's going to be, a little bit like our normal show, but a little bit more comedy involved, a little bit more lighthearted. We're going to have a good time. And so just stay tuned for the details on that. In September, we're going to do our very first live show in Huntsville.
Yep, it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's get a quick update on the writers' strike. And we'll start the update with, just a reminder that despite the fact that really the vast majority or the majority of this, this work, acting and writing for the media industry is done in New York and L.A., it is done elsewhere, including in the South, particularly in Nashville and Atlanta. And both places have had rallies supporting themselves, of course, and reminding their communities that, hey, we're here and we're on strike too, and we're the people that make media in the South run. We're the people that, that do all this, not the bosses and executives and owners in New York and LA. And friend of the show, Eric of Tennessee on Twitter, went to the Nashville SAG-AFTRA rally and put together a little video interviewing some of the participants and getting some live footage of the rally. So let's take a look at that from Eric of Tennessee on Twitter. Really cool stuff. Appreciate Eric of Tennessee doing stuff like that. Follow him on Twitter. Really good stuff. And she, some of that's the interviewee, the president of the local union of SAG-AFTRA in Nashville, spoke to some of the issues and also emphasized the fact that is really not understood enough is that the majority of these people on strike are not people like Meryl Streep or George Clooney, Tom Cruise, these millionaires who are in their capacity as actors, they are workers and they are paid for the value that they create and bring to the table, right? But they are very, very highly compensated, and I think probably in a just society they would have more of that money redistributed. But nevertheless, they're workers and they're on strike, but the majority, the vast majority of the people on strike are not in that position. And they're not even making from their acting gigs or from their writing gigs enough to make a living, and so they have to work part-time jobs in other places to really pursue this dream and to try to make it a reality, something that is sustainable, and that is just simply not understood enough. And that stat that she said is so important. 86% of SAG-AFTRA members make less than $26,000 a year. Okay, so these are people that are really, really hustling and grinding, not only working second and third and maybe fourth jobs, but also putting in so much unpaid labor. And in fact, even paying for labor in some cases, taking these acting classes and all that kind of stuff, but doing unpaid work just for quote unquote the experience or for bylines so that they can pad their, build up their resume. I have a friend here locally who she is an actor and has ambitions of doing some producerial work and stuff like that, and she was an assistant producer, a co-producer on a short film that went to film festivals and stuff for no money. Like literally she did it for free. She had to travel out of town, she had to do all sorts of nonsense for free just so that she could have that on her resume, so that maybe next time she can get paid $50 for the project or something. I mean, it's crazy how much work they put into this, and how little of the money that they get from it. But also, it's really important to note that the artificial intelligence aspect of this is huge. They're wanting to be able to scan background actors and then use their likeness without consent, without compensation, forever, in perpetuity, into eternity. I mean, that's insane. And that will cut out, that will make background actors almost irrelevant, which will therefore make it that much more difficult to break into bigger roles as an actor. Because you have less opportunities to get in front of a director, and because that money from being a background actor can help sustain you as well. And if that's one less, way to get money, then that's one less way for normal people to break into this industry. And you're going to have, the industry will be even more than it is, more and more saturated with Nepo babies and stuff like that. And we see this in all sorts of places in our society, places like DC, where politicians have unpaid internships. Who can do unpaid internships? The children of Congress people, right? The children of their staff, the children of their donors, right? Not normal people, not working people. We can't afford to take a summer working, in some cases, more than 40 hours a week for no pay. And so, the same goes for the acting industry. It is the less money that people near the bottom or the lower mid-tier get, the more difficult it is for normal folks to break into the industry. And here's some more details. SAG released an overview of where things stand with the contract negotiations. So they have these two columns on this dozen pieces of paper. It's a dozen-page document, and in the one column it says the issue and then SAG's proposal. and then it has in the other column the company's counteroffer. And there are so many, you go down the list. SAG is asking for this, rejected. SAG is asking for this, rejected. SAG is asking for that, rejected. And one of those things is new media revenue sharing. Bringing new media bringing it into the revenue program that already exists for old media. Just straight up rejected. No counteroffer or anything, just rejected. Here's another thing. The raises that they are asking for, 11% in the first year, 4% in the second year, 4% in the third year, which will only barely and really not even keep up with inflation over the pandemic. But the media companies didn't want to do that. They offered 5, 4, and 3.5. Not enough to make up for inflation, and they'll be and under that contract, the actors would be making less than they did before the pandemic in real dollars. Another issue was per diem. Their per diem allowance has not increased since 2001. So
Wow.
SAG was their proposal was increase it for inflation. A lot has changed in 22, 23 years, and also to pay the money that you are obligated to pay us, because there has apparently been a lot of issues in the industry with even getting the meager per diem that's in the contract. There's been issues with just lack of payment and late payments. And so they said, okay, one, we want to increase it, and then also we want you to comply. The counteroffer was, we'll increase it, but not as much to inflation, so you're still going to be getting less for meals than you were in 2001 in real dollars. And also, they didn't address the compliance issues, and so the implication there is like, nah, we're just going to keep like screwing you over on these payments, and really, really crazy stuff. Certainly, all solidarity with the actors and the writers. And here's hoping that they get a good contract. I think that this is one that's going to last a little while. So they have a good FAQ for people on their website, how to support. So you can Google SAG strike FAQ, and it'll take you there.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've seen a lot of people asking questions like, should I still go to the movies? Like, am I allowed to go see the new Barbie movie or whatever? And it's my understanding that nobody has called for any sort of boycott like that. And so, that's totally cool. In fact, probably would be a good thing to support the work that's already out there. I've seen where Mark Ruffalo is talking about, maybe more actors can do independent works and just sort of, bypass the studios.
Right.
And I think that's interesting. And
one of the things that SAG has done, in fact, is, and I think maybe you said this morning or you sent it to me, they have approved interim agreements with 24 independent film studios that are the terms that they're asking for from the major studios. And these independent studios are like, yeah, we can meet that. That's super reasonable. And so SAG actors are able to go work for these studios under the conditions that they're asking for from the bigger studios, and that's helpful in multiple ways. One, because it's helpful for the actors to have some amount of money, and also it's kind of prefigurative politics in a way. It's showing that what we're asking for is not unreasonable, and it is in fact so reasonable that much smaller studios are able to comply.
Much smaller studios with much smaller resources and budgets that are able to do this, right? So it's not impossible. The studios have a tremendous amount of wealth, and they absolutely can afford to settle a fair contract. And I'm with you. Certainly extend my solidarity with the actors and writers, and I hope that they can lift each other up in this struggle.
Absolutely. We are at 67 people watching live and 31 likes. Let's get those numbers up if we can.
For
we
sure.
really appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Also, if you tuned in for the conversation with the United States Football League player and the executive director of the union, we did have to scrap that. Something came up for the player, and so he wasn't able to come on. the union really wanted to have a player on, and we really wanted to have a player on to get their perspective, and also to kind of like talk shop, like talk about the season, learn about what happened there with the season and some of the stuff. And so so something came up. They weren't able to make it, so we're going to reschedule that interview, hopefully bring it to you sooner rather than later, but on a different day. And so the thing that we highlighted in the title and the thumbnail was the updates on UPS. And so let's get to that really quickly. And the biggest update is that UPS has agreed to come back to the table after pressure from the Teamsters unions. The Teamster Union practice pickets all across the country. The workers showing what it will look like when they go on strike. Going off duty, not asking anybody to not work or for a consumer boycott or anything like that, but just practicing how the picket line works, because strikes are pretty infrequent, and the last one was in 1997, so there's a lot of people at UPS who haven't been through a strike. They don't know what to do, they don't know what the rules are, they don't know what best practices are, and so this is a really good opportunity just for logistically to get people in the rhythm, right? But also again, to show that the union means business. They are not just screwing around. They are ready to strike, and they will if necessary. And so that's what those practice pickets are all about. And another thing that was really important in the last week is the pilots union. They said that they are going to honor the picket lines. They will not be flying UPS work during a strike, which is huge. And it's huge because the pilots are not represented by the Teamsters. It is a different union. Also, it is huge because despite them having a no strike clause, so they're not going to go on strike, they're just not going to cross a picket line, which I have recently learned is every worker's individual right under the National Labor Relations Act. You can never be forced as a condition of your employment to cross a picket line. So that's something that more and more people should really be taking advantage of, and this pilots union is going to be taking advantage of it. So 3,300 pilots have their union has said, we're going to not be crossing the picket line. We're not going to be flying UPS stuff if there is a strike, which puts that much more pressure on UPS. And so I think really that the pilots and the practice picket situations, showing that, the workers here are really, they're ready for a strike. That kind of stuff is all really coming together to bring UPS to the table. And so they did come to the table, and they are going to be meeting again for negotiations on July the 25th, which is Wednesday, I believe. Let's see, Sunday's the 23rd, Monday's the 24th, Tuesday's the 25th. Okay, so it's on Tuesday, which only gives 7 days. 7 days to hammer out the rest of the contract. Teamsters International President Sean O'Brien has said that they are basically there on 95% of the contract, but on the 5% that's left, the wages and the full-time jobs and things like this, they're still really far apart on. So far apart, in fact, that you'll remember the UPS proposal was leaked, and the UPS economic proposal was to cut the top tier of package car driver pay 25% after record profits, right? They're not even offering concessionary raises. They're not offering raises that are less than inflation. They're saying, no, in fact, what we need to do is cut pay by 25%. The Teamsters said this at the time. Multiple Teamsters called into the show and agreed that that is an insult, really just a spit in the face to the people who create the value for UPS, who actually deliver the packages for UPS, and to the union that they're a part of. And so they walked away from that and came back later, and there was still not any movement. And so UPS walked away from the table, refused to bargain until this week. And so we're going to see what happens. We are also tentatively going to be talking to Teddy Ostro again on the 29th on that Saturday, because on the 29th, we're only going to be 2 days away from a potential UPS Teamsters strike. And so he's going to give us the latest and greatest on that and see And we're going to see if we can kind of look into the crystal ball and see if there's going to be a strike or not. Obviously, I think that a strike would be it would be educational for the American public to see what a strike can do. But also, I do think that it would be almost as educational if they're just able to get a good contract after a credible strike threat. Because a lot of times that's all it really takes is a credible strike threat. If you demand something and your boss, your employer, does not believe that you're willing to stand up for it, then they are much more likely to just say no. But if you demand something and you show that you are not only saying that you're willing to, put some amount of risk on the table, you're willing to cost them a lot of money, then they're much more likely to comply. They're much more likely to buckle. And so, I think that's what we're seeing with UPS, with the movement that we're seeing. And so we're just going to have to see if it's enough to keep the rank and file UPS workers from striking.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple other things I wanted to mention in terms of the struggle. It's worth noting that Teamsters are picketing Amazon locations across the country throughout this fight, right? In a separate fight that's happening at the same time, though, and ultimately it's all the same fight to unionize workers in the logistics industry, in the transportation industry. And so shout out to those Teamsters that are organizing the drivers of Amazon. Of course, not employed directly by Amazon, naturally, but they are fighting for a union, for a contract. They are fighting to spread it across the country and to be recognized, for Amazon to be recognized as a joint employer. And so those pickets have kind of popped up. They started in California and they've started to spread. So we'll see what happens there. And also wanted to mention that this week, Teamsters President Sean O'Brien asked United States President Joe Biden to stay out of it.
That's also huge.
We do remember what happened with the rail workers, and we remember how the Biden White House and Congress, unfortunately, folks from both parties, certainly not everyone in Congress, but the majority of Congress, sided with the Biden White House in undercutting the rail workers and denying them their, in my opinion, human right to withhold their labor. And so, I appreciate Sean O'Brien for doing that, for making a statement to the White House. I know the initial response from the White House press was kind of non-committal, and so we'll see what happens with that. It obviously is a much different scenario because rail workers and airline workers fall under a different set of laws, and so for the president and Congress to intervene like they did in the rail workers struggle would look different, would be a little bit harder for them to pull off, but
certainly not impossible. And
it certainly it indicates that at least among the Teamsters and hopefully among more and more of our labor movement, there's some skepticism about this administration and its approach to labor behind some of the rhetoric. What matters is what really happens. And so we'll see what happens there, but I just wanted to lift that up.
And it's also, on a similar note, Bernie Sanders with several other members of Congress put out a letter stating that they would not support legislation or anything to intervene in the case of a strike. His tweet from July the 19th said, "Today I sent a letter with nearly 200 colleagues in the Senate and House with a simple message. All workers, including UPS Teamsters, deserve fair wages, safe conditions, and decent benefits. If a bargaining agreement cannot be reached, we will not intervene if UPS workers strike." That's a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure from both the Teamsters and now from the more worker-friendly flank of the Democratic Party on Biden and the more business-friendly part of the Democratic Party to not intervene, to exactly as you said, Adam, to allow these workers to exercise their constitutional right to strike. and their federally protected right under the National Labor Relations Act. So very important that Congress, that the White House not intervene, and very good to see support from some members of Congress for not intervening. And that's what, and that's, somebody asked when we mentioned last week about AOC being at a rally that Teamsters had with Sean Fain of the UAW. AOC was there. She spoke, and somebody was like, oh, well, he just told Biden to stay out of it, but now there's a politician speaking at a rally. What's up with that? Do you want politicians to participate or not? And it's totally different for a politician to come out and support you and say, I'm not going to stop you from striking. That's totally different than telling a politician to not intervene.
Right.
That was a really weird...
In fact, I think they would probably prefer they go to a pro-UPS rally than actually intervene in the negotiations. Because at least in that sense, you'd be, a little bit honest about where you stand. But I think that, to me, it is different.
Yeah, it's different, and totally fine.
And I think it's debatable on which politicians do you allow to come to your rally? Like, does it help? Does it alienate people? There's a lot that goes into that, right? And it's complicated and messy, and it's easy to Monday morning quarterback that kind of decision. But it is different, just appearing at the rally, offering support and solidarity versus actually intervening and sticking your nose in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's go ahead and head to our second break, and then we'll come back and wrap the show up. Just a reminder, our phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can call in, participate in the show, send us a text message. We'll be right back to finish up the main show before we go into overtime.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and neighbors are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough to keep their jobs. We need to fix this. Let's close the health care coverage gap. To learn more, visit coveralabama.org.
Support for this program also comes from the Iron Workers, Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Ironworkers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs, from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Ironworkers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
The Laborers International Union of North America, Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact Donna at their training center to start the process. That phone number is 256-415-7452. Again, that phone number is 256-415-7452. No experience is needed. Free training is offered, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is their mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
I'm Attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you.
Sinyard Law. And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case.
Sinyard Law. A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Do you work in an auto manufacturing plant? Are you tired of taking pride in your work without getting the respect you deserve? Consider joining the fight to unionize. Auto workers across the industry are coming together because with a union, we can negotiate for the pay, benefits, and security that we deserve and can help sustain our families. In union plants, workers bargain for long-term wage increases, competitive bonuses, and more affordable benefits. You can join the growing wave of organizing today. Find out more and contact us at Uniting Auto Workers on Facebook or contact UAW Region 8 in Lebanon, Tennessee by going to www.uawregion8.net. That's www.uawregion8.net. A better future is ours.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Alabama's only union talk radio show. This is the Valley Labor Report, and my name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller, and we're broadcasting live, online, and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studio in Huntsville, Alabama. We have a question in the chat that I want to add, that I want to answer, because I think it's a good question, and this may actually, I had something else lined up, but this may be the last segment of the show. Alex asks, and presumably Alex is a UPS Teamster. I know a coworker that's going to cross the picket line. What do I do? I'm no snitch, but I also don't want a scab. And when you say I don't want a scab, presumably I don't want to be friends with a scab is what you mean, or I don't want somebody in my facility to be a scab. And so what do you do if you have a coworker that is intending on crossing the picket line? I think that's a very important conversation, and this is the time to have it, because it gets much harder to have these conversations after they have decided to scab.
Right.
But which is not to say that forgiveness for scabbing is impossible. But it is very difficult. One instance of forgiveness for a scab that I found really powerful was from the 1987 paper strike at the Androscoggin International Paper Mill in Maine, where they had Wednesday evening meetings to have rallies, to have songs and updates on negotiations, and there was a fellow who had crossed the picket line and who got up there and publicly spoke about, publicly apologized and said that it was. I was scared. It was a moment of weakness, and I'm so sorry that I did this, and I'm never going to cross picket line again. And he's was crying, and from the testimonials in all the books that I've read about that strike, everybody else was really emotional as well, and they accepted him, and so it was a really kind of a growing moment for this worker and a powerful moment of solidarity and redemption and forgiveness for the union. But that's obviously not always the way that it works, right? So, and this is what I said in the chat. I think that really the only thing to do right now, the only thing that you can do is to educate them about the importance of solidarity. And, presumably, this may not be the case, but presumably one of the reasons that your coworker may be interested in scabbing is that maybe he thinks, oh, we've got it so good now. Why would I want more? My coworkers who are willing to strike are just being greedy. And if that's his thinking, if that's his reasoning, then somebody just needs to explain to him that that your predecessors in the Teamsters at UPS did not get what they have now by lying down. They didn't get what they have now by just accepting whatever it was that UPS was willing to give them. They were willing and did go on strike to demand that UPS give them what they're worth and give them more of the value that they create. And that's the only way that you get something like that. I mean, $40 an hour for a package car driver, that is some of the highest pay in the industry. But they didn't get that by lying down. And of course, there are some complicating factors. There is the fact that there's lots of forced overtime, and it's not just all sunshine and roses, even for the people at the top of the progression scale. And it's also important to note that the vast majority of workers at UPS are part-time and do not make anywhere near $40 an hour. Many of them don't even make $20 an hour. And so, but the people who do, they didn't get that. They didn't get that by lying down. And so the only way that you're going to keep what you have and the only way that you're going to be able to get more is by being willing to strike. And it's also, scabbing is a betrayal of your community, of your coworkers. It's a terribly, terribly selfish and greedy and treasonous thing to do. You're really literally undercutting the very people that you're going to have to work with after the strike. You are materially contributing to the boss's campaign to destroy the union when you scab.
You are, and there's a lot more we could dive into there. I mean, there's direct economic impact, right? Because when you scab, you undermine the leverage that your coworkers have, right? And so whatever short-term benefits you may gain will not pay off in the long run, right? Because in the long run, you're undermining everyone in your situation, right? And so you're undermining that leverage and power of the workers, and not just workers in general, right? Like the working class, but literally the workers in your industry, in your field of work, like what you do for a living, right? You're undermining that. You're undercutting that. You're lowering the standard that you will be held to in your future, right? So even if you're not into the other aspects of solidarity, even if you're not really concerned about the ethical implications, the moral implications, the spiritual implications of this, on a direct material economic impact, scabbing is going to hurt you in the long run, right? So maybe that works with this particular worker. Maybe they need to recognize that there are serious consequences, right, in terms of their reputation, in terms of their ability to get work in the future, in terms of their ability to have relationships with folks in the future. There are real consequences, both formal and informal. And so, that's important to recognize. And
you're leading the race to the bottom.
You are leading the race to the bottom. And something I want to get out there is that it's easy to beat up on these people. And the thing is, obviously, there's a lot of money and time and resources invested in getting people to think that way, in getting people to think of themselves as these atomized individuals who have no, interest in the broader society or their community or what happens to other people. And I think that, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I believe that there's something else out there. I believe that there is a greater good. Call it whatever you want. But there's something out there that binds us all together. And so it's important that you look out for one another. And by betraying your coworkers, you're not only stabbing them in the back, you're ultimately hurting yourself as well. And you're undermining the solidarity of the coworkers in your facility, but more broadly, working people in our country and in our world. Mm-hmm. And so there are real consequences to that. I know there's a lot of pressure on people to pay their bills and to find a way to hustle and make it work, right? And I get that. And we all are faced with constrained choices in this system. And often the choices that ordinary working people have on the table are not very good choices.
Right.
Often we have varying degrees of bad choices to choose from. But don't make that choice. Don't make that choice. You can do better. And, I know folks are listening thinking, well, who's going to pay their bills? You'd be surprised.
Yes.
You'd be surprised if you remain devoted to the movement, what the movement can bring to you.
Yeah. And it is worth mentioning that the Teamsters do have strike pay. They have strike pay. It's obviously not what you would be getting if you were working, but I think the Teamsters have some of the higher strike pay. I think it's like $400 a week, maybe. If you're a UPS Teamster, ask your local president about that. Ask your business agent about that. But I think it's something like $400 a week. I believe it starts on day one, and so it's not like you're just going to be left out totally high and dry. They will have some disaster health insurance that you can get onto. The local unions often have fundraisers to help particular members that are particularly financially stressed, and so if that is you out there, if you're listening and you're thinking, I don't know how I can make it through a strike, talk to your union
and talk
to your coworkers, talk to your local union. Say, I am financially incapable of making it through a prolonged strike. I need help, and people will be willing to help you. Something that International President of the United Mine Workers of America, Cecil Roberts, one of his messages to the scabs in Brookwood was, you may think that 20 or however much dollars an hour you're making to scab, that these people are asking for too much. If you're willing to be a $20 crowd, there's a $15 crowd waiting to undercut you, and there's a $10 crowd waiting to undercut them. Right, you're leading the race to the bottom if you take the boss's side in a strike. So don't do that. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. Every week we have a second half of the show. So we're wrapping up the main show. We're wrapping up the first half, but we are still going to be on the air for another hour and a half online on Facebook and YouTube. So find us at the Valley Labor Report there, and you can continue watching the show. We're going to have some great stuff. We're going to take a look at some more TikToks. There's another scab TikTok influencer that we're going to talk about. It's going to be fun. Then we've got a better TikTok, just to show you that not everybody on TikTok is a parasitic ghoul. And we're going to be talking to Will from Jobs to Move America about community benefit agreements. Lots of good stuff to talk about in overtime. So make sure that you follow us there. Also, Labor Notes. They're always hosting online trainings. You can go to labornotes.org to see what they have. They are this week or this month, they're having a caucus how-to. A rank-and-file reform caucus is a group of members who set out to transform the union, establishing a new vision and organizing to make it real. That's going to be on August 9th. So if you're interested in trying to build up, a caucus that is maybe more effective in your union, then consider that training. This Wednesday, July the 26th, there's a Creative Arts Youth Summer Camp at Flint River Church in CWA. 3905 Union Steward in Huntsville, Joseph Barker, is going to be teaching a cooking class for the kiddos, so that's going to be really cool. On Tuesday, July 25th, the AFL-CIO is going to have a immigrant worker protection training. Check out their website for more on that. And with that, we're going to go ahead and head into overtime. So stay tuned. See you next week. Okay. All right, we're off the radio now. Appreciate everybody staying with us. Hopefully we had some people follow us from the radio, and you're still listening. And you're going to stay for overtime with us. Like I said, it's going to be a great show. We've got some good stuff. Got some funny TikToks to share with you. Got a good interview, and got some more stories to talk about. So if you want to call in, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-5... Wait, what? What is it?
Whoops. Start that from scratch. We'll cut that out in the post-production, right?
844-899-8857. There you go. Call in if you want to talk. We'll be right back.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Folks, welcome back. You are still listening to the Valley Labor Report, and we are now in overtime, the second half of the program where we are online only. We have freed ourselves from the shackles of the FCC censors, and we're going to continue talking union, talking labor, talking news, all sorts of stuff. Really excited to talk to Will from Jobs to Move America about community benefits agreements. There's some really cool stuff coming out of that. But first, we got a caller, looks like.
All right, let's get the caller on the air here.
Appreciate everybody hanging out with us in the chat and the $5 super chat from Infinite Contents. Thank you.
All right, 714, you're on the air.
Buenos dias, gentlemen. Buenos dias, Jake, Adam. It's Jose Francisco Negrete out here from Anaheim, California. Teamster Local 952, 25-year part-timer. And I want to give a quick shout-out to my boys in Anaheim Twilight. Some of them have actually been listening to the show. They're like, dude, awesome. were you on some show? Like, yeah, I call in sometimes. So shout out to them. So it's the Valley Labor Report is kind of growing. I guess I'm the Southern California Labor Report.
There you go.
You're our Anaheim delegate.
Yeah, you're our.
Yes. Well, Southern California, because I go to LA a lot. I want to go to San Diego because their San Marcos hub in Local 542 is going to have a practice picket this Wednesday morning. So I want to go, and hopefully I have my shirts made because I want to have I'm making 3 shirts. One that says "Fight for 25." The other one is going to say 25 to survive, and one that I got from my good friend Jessica Lester from Local 728 that said 25 is the low or we won't know. So I want to take one of those goodies with me down there because it's now the negotiations are going to resume this Tuesday. It's vitally important that the part-timers finally get some piece of the pie, because for so long the top rate for drivers it's always gone up. It's never stayed stagnant. It's never stayed at 36 or 39 or 41. It's always gone up. But part-time pay has stayed stagnant. Those wages have been depressed. It wasn't just till recently that in the 2013 contract that it went up. It went up from $8.50 to $10. Big old whoopie-doo. But yeah, it's time to get the message out that the part-timers deserve a thriving wage of $25. Anything less than that for me and hopefully for many other part-timers. And I know there's some comrades that are full-timers, like my friend, my good friend Will Peña, or we call Big Will the Thrill, we're going to vote no. I mean, we can't be kicking this can down the road any longer. Part-timers deserve a thriving wage. The short amount of hours that we work and the intensity of that duration is taxing on a body. You should see some of these guys and some of these girls that load. Love you too. I'm talking to my son, excuse me. But I do love the show. When one of the members is either preloading into loading into 3 or 4 package cars or loading into a 45-foot trailer, you're coming out drenched in sweat. Your clothes are dirty, probably maybe a cut and a bruise here and there. Right. It's time that part-timers deserve a slice of the pie. Our wealth has generated billions for UPS, billions. Why do you think they make so much money? It's because the suppression of the part-time wages for so long has benefited only one, which is UPS.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's... Do what?
Okay, I was going to say, I heard you guys were talking about the health insurance. If you're in team care, you have one punch a month rule, which is awesome. But if you're out here in the Southwest, Arizona, Nevada, Southern California, I forgot. Hopefully, I didn't miss one state. I think I said Arizona. You're under one punch a week. So if you punch in, for example, sake of argument, we're going on strike. We work on the 31st. We work on the 31st. We strike on August 1st. So by August 5th, we will lose our health insurance. So it's vitally important, whatever state you're in, to go into talk to your union representatives and find out if there's some sort of state coverage that you could be on. In Southern California, or in California in general speaking, you could get covered California, what they call the Cadillac plan. It's Assembly Bill 2530, which states, any worker that loses their job for like a strike reason, they could get covered California, and they'll get the premium health insurance that the state allows. So we have that out here, but that's for somebody that has their family on healthcare, and one of their family members needs that health insurance because they have, like my son has a UV light treatment because he has a skin cancer. It's like superficial, so he has to go into this booth, and it's a UV light. So my son needs it.
Right.
Fortunately for me, I work as an instructional assistant at the Anaheim Union High School District, so they've given me health insurance after like 10 years. I've been there 17, but I have to go over there and just change insurance just in case. But with negotiation resuming, and a couple weeks ago, I want to say 2 weeks ago, the IBT said that, and Sean O'Brien reiterated this on the last membership call, I believe it was last Sunday, saying if there's a tentative agreement in place, then he's going to let the process play out, and it's going to be the traditional mail ballot, which we'll get a letter sent to our house. It's going to have a website and an access code. You put that access code, you go on that website, you put that access code, and the ballot shows up. So he said he's going to let that play out. But if that tentative agreement doesn't have $25 starting for part-timers, for me it's a no. And I just hope the sound of my voice, hopefully it's not annoying too, but that part-timers listen to it and understand your work has dignity. Your work has value. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. Don't let a senior part-timer tell you otherwise. Don't let management tell you otherwise. Your work has dignity. Your work has value. Vote no if it's $25 or less. We need to make a stand. At what point do we make a stand? Till 25% of part-timers are being unhoused or living in shelters? At what point? I already know of members that are living in house, that are unhoused or living in a shelter, or have some housing complications. At what point?
Right.
We have to do the morally right thing for the part-timers. Full-timers, you got yours. I'm so happy for you guys. You guys deserve it. It's a hard work when you go driving. But don't forget about the part-timers. Do not forget about the part-timers. You might make as much as a hub manager, makes you think that you're upper middle class. But remember where you came from. You probably started in part-time, and you probably worked part-time for a good 6 years. And then you got your call and you went driving and you passed the class and you passed your probation. But you have to look out for your part-timers. You have to. An injury to one is an injury to all. If we've been suffering through poverty pay and you've been excelling because of your hard work, and top rate for drivers have never gone down, it's never stayed stagnant, it's time that you look to your part-timers and say, you know what, you guys deserve a slice of the pie.
Could not agree more. You mentioned the a members update from Sean O'Brien. Did he say if there is a tentative agreement that's made, kind of late, what is the what's the plan as far as striking? If there's a tentative agreement, will y'all just be working without a contract until the agreement is ratified or voted no or voted down?
It depends. If there's a tentative agreement, like for example on July 31st, there's a handshake, or the 11th hour there's a handshake, right? Then he's gonna let the process play out, which will take 2 to 3 weeks, and we're gonna work through that ratification process. Now, if it gets shot down, if it gets voted no, for whatever reasons they may be, that's going to be interesting. I don't think anybody's asked Sean O'Brien, our general president, that if this contract gets shot down, will he take us on strike? That part I don't know. I had a talk with him Tuesday because he visited my hub. He visited Anaheim Twilight, and I just said, the fight has to be for 25, and not so many words. I reiterated it to him, the fight, it has to be at 25. I mean, I don't need to be telling him I'm going to vote no, but me stressing upon the vote for 25 is my way of saying, look, it has to be 25 or it's going to be a no. But I kept stressing upon it about the fight for 25.
What was his reaction?
He was cordial. He was listening. He was telling me he's fighting. But I kept reiterating to him, it has to be 25. He goes, if it's a fight for 25, 22 or 23, we're fighting. So I told him, it has to be 25. And I feel like my good friend Jessica Lister from 728 says 25 is the low, or we vote no. I'm trying to do a southern draw because she's from Atlanta.
That was not a good southern draw, Jose.
Okay, I'm all right. I'm sorry. I guess Dukes of Hazzard didn't do. When I watched as a kid, I thought I was one of the Dukes of Hazzard dudes. I love the car, except for the Confederate flag. But the car was pretty cool, and the show was pretty cool. But anywho, I digress. It's 25. It's 25. The fight has to be for 25. We have all these multi-tiers that we have at UPS through classifications, 22 threes combo. They make $6 less than a regular package car driver. Why do we have these hierarchies? And guess what? Many of our members just accept this hierarchy and will defend the hierarchy. We'll be like, oh no, we deserve that. You guys don't deserve 25. You guys deserve 20, and the other 5 should go for us, and it should go into the pension.
Right.
We have to make the choices. No, I don't see UPS making the choices. In 2020, when UPS could have done the morally right thing and pay us hazard pay, they chose not to. They chose to say we have an existing contractual agreement when it comes to economics. We want to respect that. Right. When they made $100 billion in revenue in 2020, and they authorized $5 billion for stock buyback, and then they approved another $2 million, I think, on top of it for stock buyback. That wasn't doing the right thing. Why couldn't they use that $7 billion and give it to the workforce that worked through fear, that worked through uncertainty, and some of us passed away. Some of us are still feeling the ramifications of COVID. UPS never does the right thing. They don't choose. They choose to reward themselves rather than reward the people who are the logistics, the people who are able to get it done, which is us, the workers.
Right. Jose, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Appreciate you.
We have Will in the Zoom now, right?
We do have Will in the Zoom.
Perfect.
Yes.
So Will Tucker. Will Tucker is the director for the Jobs to Move America's Southern program. He's got nearly a decade of experience as a journalist in Alabama and Washington, D.C. His expertise lies in filing public records requests and digging through data. Previously, he worked for the Southern Poverty Law Center as an investigative reporter covering criminal justice, focusing on prisons and work release. I guess I'll ask him if he was part of the union campaign there. Before that, in Washington, D.C., he covered congressional ethics and money in politics for the Houston Chronicle and OpenSecrets.org. Their reports under his byline led to 2 ethics committee investigations in the House of Representatives involving misconduct by 11 members of Congress and the federal conviction of a former congressman on nearly 24 corruption charges. Wow, Will, thank you for joining the Valley Labor Report.
Hey, y'all. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So I see here that you that you worked for the Southern Poverty Law Center. Were you there during the union campaign a few years ago?
I did, and I was, and happily signed a card. And yeah, it was a really formative experience for me, actually, on my path into kind of the labor movement work.
Awesome. Yeah, we were really excited to see that campaign. We had the honor of talking to a few of the people in the union, both during the union campaign and since then. So really appreciate their work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Could you just start by, with that in mind, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story, particularly as it relates, to labor and the working class movement?
Yeah, of course. So, you mentioned in my intro that I used to be a journalist, an investigative reporter, and really the short answer to how I got into the work that we're doing today with Jobs to Move America. I did an investigation into a death at a poultry plant in 2018. It was the death of a man named Frank Ellington, who had been in the prison work release program. So he was, incarcerated, but was basically bused to and from this poultry plant in Ashland, Alabama, every day to work there. Just pretty horrific conditions in poultry plants, as I'm sure that y'all have talked about or at least aware of. Even to this day, I mean, there was a death of a young man in Mississippi.
Right.
Just
we were talking about
ago,
that just earlier
poultry
this morning. Yeah.
Yeah, poultry plant in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. But so I did this I investigated this death and how it came to be that a man was put in such a dangerous position, and just got really interested in all of these issues, like kind of attendant issues to that. So this was a union facility, so it's an RWDSU represented facility, or plant rather. But I got really interested in the ways that companies, particularly in the South and particularly in the rural South, are cracking their workforces and diluting the power of unions by seeking out and receiving, in many cases, assists from the state in obtaining workers who are more vulnerable, workers who can't fight back, workers who are prevented one way or another from joining the union. So I got really interested in those issues, and that kind of set me off on this path where, I wanted to use my investigative reporting skills kind of on behalf of or in solidarity with the labor movement. And that led me to Jobs to Move America. So that's how I got to where I am today.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think you're touching on something that we talk about a lot on this show, which is some of the unique ways that the South is just hyper exploited in the ways in which unions are just really combated every step of the way here in the South. So tell us about Jobs to Move America. What kind of work do y'all do? What is JMA and what are y'all up to?
Yeah, sure. So Jobs to Move America we're a nonprofit strategic policy and campaigns center. We've got offices in California, Illinois, New York, and the South, so around Birmingham and Jackson, Mississippi. We've got personnel in all those places. And when I say strategic campaigns and policy centers, basically what I mean is that our purpose is to advocate for policies in the purchasing regions of this country, so the places that buy a lot of goods that are manufactured in places like the South. And so we focus on procurement policies in those areas, like in Los Angeles and in New York City and Chicago. We try to influence the purchasing policies, the procurement policies in those places, and add to those procedures standards for the jobs that are created and sustained by the purchasing of those cities. So to give you an example, when electric buses are manufactured in Alabama, they're purchased by oftentimes, places like LA Metro. Thanks to Jobs to Move America's work, LA Metro has adopted a series of standards for job quality that manufacturers of electric buses need to abide by in order to get a leg up in the RFP process, get a leg up in the procurement process. They, get awarded extra points for showing that they have lived up to certain salary and job benefits. And so, the quickest way to get those standards met is to unionize your facility. And so we use these policies that we achieve in places like LA and New York City to really advocate in the South in particular on behalf of workers.
Yeah, and one of the things that is a big part of the work that y'all do is community benefits agreements. So I was wondering if you could, tell us a little bit about, what are CBAs in general, how do they happen, and why are they a good thing for the labor movement?
Yeah, of course. So a community benefits agreement is a private contract between an employer and often a coalition of community groups, which includes labor, but it can also include, social justice organizations and immigrant rights organizations. Folks like in Alabama, we have a coalition for community benefits that includes the state chapter of the NAACP, Greater Birmingham Ministries, which is a faith-based direct services organization based out of Birmingham, Alabama Arise, which is a research focused research and advocacy nonprofit in Montgomery, and several other organizations. I think we're up to nearly 20 to 24 organizations that are in and around and in solidarity with our coalition here. But so the community benefits agreement, the coalition comes together and sits on one side of the table, negotiates across the table with a company, a manufacturer. And what we can achieve through this agreement are these kinds of job standards, equity measures, and provisions in the community benefit agreement that address specific problems to the community where the manufacturing plant lies, or sits. And so a community benefits agreement can really can actually transform a local economy. It can transform a local community by changing the practices of one of the largest employers in the area. And so some examples of these agreements that Jobs to Move America and our community coalitions have negotiated before are in the electric bus industry, like I mentioned earlier. So we've got, successful community benefits agreements with BYD, which is a electric bus manufacturer out in California. Importantly for this audience and for us here, a community benefits agreement with New Flyer, which is a bus manufacturer in Anniston, Alabama. And this is, important because even within a community benefits agreement, it's important for labor because, one of the things that you can really get the community behind and achieve in a community benefits agreement is, you can achieve favorable agreements and provisions with the company that really level the playing field for workers who want to organize. And that's what we've been able to do at BYD, Proterra, another bus manufacturer, and at New Flyer as well. We also focused at JMA in the past on the rail car industry, so rail car manufacturing, and we have community benefits agreements with companies like CRRC and Incusario, which manufacture the rail cars that are purchased by metro transit agencies across the country.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating to be able to use something that seems kind of obscure, right? Like procurement policies of various metros, right? That doesn't exactly excite the average person probably. But it's a way in which we can actually make real material impacts on people's lives and actually improve people's lives at work. And so that's a really big deal. So I'm interested to hear a little bit more about the CBA, the Community Benefits Agreement with New Flyer in Anniston. Could you tell us a little bit like what's involved with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can just go into looking at some of the provisions. One of the most important provisions, kind of an equity, race and class equity provision, is a series of targeted hiring goals. And so through negotiations last year, New Flyer agreed to hire 45% of all new hires from historically disadvantaged groups. So these were defined as groups who had traditionally been blocked from jobs in the manufacturing industry and in green tech manufacturing in particular. And so, historically disadvantaged groups as defined by the agreement includes Black workers, it includes LGBTQ folks, it includes women, and really, really importantly, folks who have been caught up in the criminal punishment system, which is important in Alabama because of the high degree of over-policing and over-criminalization in the state that prevents so many people from getting jobs. So we've got those targeted hiring provisions. We've got things in there like, again, on the issue with folks who are systems impacted by the criminal punishment system. We achieved a ban the box provision. So New Flyer will not will not conduct a background check on any worker before a conditional offer of employment is made, which is a really important criminal justice reform that we were able to bring to Alabama through the Community Benefits Agreement. Don't know that that could have been achieved in this state in any other way. We've got other training is another huge section. So of the Community Benefits Agreement. So New Flyer agreed to institute a new technical training initiative. They're adopting an electrical apprenticeship program. They also agreed to tie that electrical apprenticeship program to a pre-apprenticeship program that Jobs to Move America is putting together right now. And you can kind of see how this creates a pathway for potential employees at that plant. So the kind of aperture of who can be, who the company lets in the door is opened up, and they are, being really intentional about hiring people from historically disadvantaged groups. We've removed some of those barriers again for, like, for example, the barriers against systems impacted folks. And then once they're in the door at the plant, we've got a system, we will have soon a system in place where those folks are supported and given the training that they need to succeed in the workplace, even if they have never stepped foot in a manufacturing setting before, which is really important. And also, that the impact of a research on the impact of an apprenticeship program, I'm sure I don't need to tell this audience this because it's intuitive, but the research on this as well is kind of staggering. The ability, if you're able to get into a rigorous apprenticeship program, the lifetime earnings that you're potentially going to be bringing in are pretty staggering. And of course, that's another reason why it's important to remain in really strong solidarity with our union brothers and sisters who have built out that apprenticeship system over the years. So there's a bunch of other provisions in the Community Benefits Agreement with New Flyer. One other one I'll mention right now is a alternative complaint system that essentially gives workers a way to address racial discrimination and sexual harassment claims that is provides them with an advocate even within the company's internal processes. And this, is can be an empowering thing for workers who would otherwise feel like they can't bring up the issue for fear of retaliation, perhaps. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Having an outside advocate, having an outside procedure, and just knowing that there are other folks kind of watching, that certainly helps. I think these community benefit agreements are really an important way that we can rethink and reshape all this so-called, economic development that we hear a lot from politicians about. They love that phrase, economic development. But I think using the community benefits agreements, we can really leverage state power and state money to uplift everyday people and lift the standards in our workplaces. And to accomplish these CBAs, obviously, we need buy-in from some pretty different groups, right? Starting with the workers themselves, the labor unions that may be involved, community allies and coalition partners, and as you mentioned earlier, ultimately, at least on some level, public officials and business interests, right, have to be bought into this. So talk to us about some of the different and overlapping messages that you kind of have for these different constituencies who all are impacted by an agreement like this.
Sure. Well, first off, I've started when explaining, what we can achieve in a community benefits agreement to someone who's never heard it before. I've started kind of using this, just centering on solidarity. So what a community coalition can achieve in a community benefits agreement, or any kind of contract for that matter, comes down to the degree of solidarity that you can achieve. It's directly proportional to the solidarity, because that's where community power comes from. It comes from solidarity. So to give you an example, when we were negotiating this agreement with New Flyer, our community coalition, which also included the communication workers and CWA and the steel workers. And then at one point, the company thought that they might be able to negotiate with just the unions. At another point, they thought they might just be able to negotiate with just the community groups. And throughout the negotiations, we always said, no, if you're going to negotiate with one of us, you negotiate with all of us. So that level of solidarity gave us the runway, gave us the strength and the power to, get the best agreement possible. And I think that's really just the name of the game, is developing unshakable solidarity between labor and community groups to achieve, the best agreement possible. So I think another thing too is, and to Adam, to your point, we do need to have, local business entities bought into these agreements. Certainly New Flyer, for example, has to be bought into it, and they are, and they're, a good partner for us. And, they're achieving really remarkable things actually under the agreement. But another important part here is that with a community benefits agreement, we can circumvent the systems that keep labor and community groups down, often in the state of Alabama in particular. So I'm thinking of the issue of preemption. So when the city of Birmingham tries to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, several years ago, the state legislature jumps in and says, no, you can't do that, and preempts the local ordinance.
Right.
Our agreement is a private agreement between a coalition of community-based organizations and unions, and so there's nothing to preempt there. So this is why it's important that we seek things like the ban the box provision that I mentioned earlier. Things that would be preempted otherwise. So it's an avenue for exercising power that gets us out from under the blocks against that power in the state as well. And again, that just means as long as we have the runway that's built with solidarity and we can hold out in negotiations and demand more, there's really no limit to what we can achieve with these community benefits agreements, no matter where the employer is. And then, of course, once the agreement is signed, that's when we become, it's when we get in partnership with the company itself. And a really key part of that is a system of accountability. So a community benefits agreement is a real community benefits agreement is governed by a system of private arbitration. So binding private arbitration. So, our commitments to one another as partners, the community groups, unions, and the employer are enforceable. The
Right.
promises that the company makes are enforceable, which is an important aspect of this as well.
Right, absolutely. There's actually, strings attached. And right, that's always been my biggest beef with the way we do economic development here in the South and in Alabama is, the no strings attached subsidies and incentives, and or you see celebrations of companies relocating to Alabama or coming to Alabama and expanding here. But there's never any discussion about, well, what kind of wages are they going to pay these people? How many are actually full-time versus part-time? What kind of benefits are going to be provided? What's this company's record when it comes to the environment? What's their company's record when it comes to, formerly incarcerated workers, or when it comes to labor unions? Are they a vicious union-busting kind of company, right? Is that who is benefiting? And so those are all, to me, factors that are really, that make this important, this community benefits agreement. And to your point, you're able to accomplish things that, if we're being realistic, are not going to make it through the Alabama legislature in the year 2023, right? And so some of the things that you can get with this organizing power and bringing in the workers in the community together is really pretty cool. I mean, considering the tough uphill battle we have politically and legislatively. And so that kind of leads me to my next question, which is, if someone is listening and thinks, wow, this is really cool, that's great. I'd like to see that in, my hometown, in Athens or in Decatur or Florence or wherever. What's your message to them about doing this and trying to secure a community benefits agreement in their community?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is to think about, I think the first thing to think about is, what are your community assets? What community assets are you plugged into? And by community assets, I mean, do you go to church? Does that church have a van that could participate in a workforce equity program and helping people without transportation get to work, as they're kind of starting out in a new job? But more importantly, think about, if you go to church, or if you're part of a grassroots community organization, how can you reach out to labor and start building those bonds of solidarity organically, not necessarily between some, statewide coalition like ours, although, you'd be more than welcome to join our coalition meetings. Think about how you can build those organic bonds in your own community between labor and the community groups that, you can open the door at. So places where you can invite labor in, invite in, a local business manager, invite in a local organizer. There are campaigns going on all over the place. And if, doesn't have to be your union. It doesn't have to be, it can just be whatever is going on in your community. If you've got your ear to the ground and you know of workers who want to organize, connect them with the community organizations, or again, churches or schools or whatever that you have access to, and start building those bonds. So that's the very, very first thing. And then I think, look at one thing that kind of ties all of my work together personally, and then also, I think that we're doing a really good job at Jobs Moving America's Southern program right now on the research side, is look at where the most oppressed workers are in your community and figure out how to build those bonds of real community with them. So, how that can be done. Whether that's folks who have been incarcerated, folks who are under some kind of state supervision, whether those are undocumented immigrants in your community or, anybody else, LGBTQ workers, figure out, who those folks are and start building community intentionally with them. Don't have an objective at the beginning, but become part of be in community. In the organizing, that I've participated in the past, we use this phrase like, we can move at the speed of trust. And so we've got to build trust. And the more trust we have, the faster and better we can move with each other. And so that I think we need all over the state, all over Alabama, all over Mississippi, all the time. We got to for those,
and not just for community benefits agreements, but just in general to build our power as everyday people. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think community. I wouldn't close the door to community benefits agreements, but it's that solidarity that makes the real community benefits agreement powerful. So, if you want to be thinking, just think about the day when you can bring together, your own local coalition of community groups, to the doors of a factory and tell them, you need to listen to us and you need to sit down and negotiate an agreement with us that resolves these problems for, these workers, these members of our community. And here's how you do that. So, this can happen organically all over. But it can also, there's something to be said also for kind of learning the process and the rhythms of campaigns. And for that, engage with Jobs to Move America, engage with our coalition. We're, gearing up for more campaigns in the very near future, and would love to have your support. And, many hands make light work. So the more hands we have, the more work, better work we can do.
Absolutely, yeah, and there's some big projects happening all over the South, and even more big projects to come. And I think those are all opportunities for us to organize and to get some concessions out of these big projects, and to get some guarantees, and to raise the standard for working people here in the South. Because for far too long, the South has been an escape for companies. Trying to escape unions, trying to escape environmental regulations, trying to escape any sort of protections regarding race or gender. So it's really important here in the South that we are working together to build agreements such as this, but also as you said, just to have that solidarity that makes agreements like this possible. So, Will, was there anything else that we missed that you wanted to share about either community benefits agreements or just in general what Jobs to Move America is doing?
Yeah, I think we've just got really exciting things coming down the pike at JMA over the next few months. Some campaigns that we want to launch. Some research that we're going to be launching. We want, a little bit of exposure for and attention on. And so just stay tuned. If you want to connect with JMA, just go to our website. It's jobstomoveamerica.org, jobstomoveamerica.org. At the top right, there is a stay connected. That'll get you on our listserv, or sign up for our email updates, and that's probably the best and quickest way to stay up to date with what we're doing, especially in the South.
Absolutely. Well, Will, thank you so much. I know y'all have a lot of really great work that is in the works, some of which you can't talk about yet, but hopefully you'll be able to come back on the program and as well as your team and share some of this good work, and especially some of the research you're talking about once it's time to go public. Would definitely love to cover that. So really appreciate all your work, Will, and thanks for joining the program.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Appreciate you having me. Y'all got a great show. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Have a good one, man.
That was Will Tucker, Southern Programs Director for Jobs to Move America. Appreciate him coming on the show. Phone number is 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857. If you want to call into the show, comment on anything that we've been talking about so far, or ask us a question. If you're listening to this as a podcast, you can leave us a voicemail, and we might respond on the next show. In the meantime, let's take a look at this, at another scab influencer on TikTok.
Why are you doing this to me?
Because I think it's funny. So,
all right.
That's
okay.
Really...
Okay. Are we ready for this?
Yeah. So this guy, he's not a scab nurse. He is a, well, it's not clear actually if he did what he is planning on doing, if he would be a scab in the SAG strike, which is even more, which makes it even more absurd that he is talking about. I mean, literally, he said, I will be the leader of the scabs. And it's not even clear that this production is and he actually said later that it's a non-union production. And so it's not scabbing, in fact. And
he's stealing valor from scabs. Wow.
Stolen scab valor. Yeah. Really kind of crazy stuff. So, the controversy started when he said, "Oh, I've got a big announcement. It might change my life. I might have my own show." Blah blah blah. And rightfully, people were like, "What are you talking about, buddy?"
There are there's no new shows happening right now.
And so somebody commented like, "That sounds cool. Give us an update after the strike." And so. So this was his response to the first little bit of kind of tentative pushback that he got from his announcement. Let's take a look at that one.
Okay, this is something that I totally disagree with. I don't care if Hollywood is striking right now. I'm not union. I'm not part of the union. I'm never going to be. I don't care if they label me a scab. The fact that they refer to non-union actors as scabs says a lot about their character.
Okay.
I'm going to work.
Hold on.
There are a lot of people who would be so happy.
Nobody refers to non-union actors as scabs. People refer to people who cross picket lines and take union workers' jobs as scabs.
There is a difference.
And see, this is kind of and we'll get into why maybe he has kind of this persecution complex, this grievance, this kind of grievance-driven mindset, because the idea that like, oh, just anybody who doesn't work union is a scab. Like, that's not the case. Nobody says that. And so why are you, if your production is non-union, why are you feeling so aggrieved by people calling scabs? It's pretty strange. And but it does not, but the thing that it says about people's character when they call scabs is that they are good.
Right. They understand solidarity and they get it.
Yep. All right, let's continue.
The fact that they refer to non-union actors as scabs says a lot about their character. I'm going to work. There are a lot of people who would be so happy to take the places of all of these actors. I could have articulated that a little bit better, but any day I'm going.
We can stop there for a second. Yeah, you could have articulated that a little bit better by not articulating it. That's the way that you could have articulated that better, because that is what everybody says about every strike. That, oh, there are so many people that would be willing to be in your spot. And so therefore, you got to lie down and take it. You got to walk away from the bargaining table with your tail between your legs and accept whatever the bosses tell you.
Right. We're just all hostages, just captive.
Right. We have no agency. Yeah. Terrible.
If baseball players went on strike, I would volunteer to play. But you know what? I don't think they would put me on the field.
There you go.
I mean, I wouldn't actually volunteer to play because I would never scab on someone. But you know what I'm saying? Like, this idea is kind of silly.
Right.
Yes, there are plenty of desperate, hungry people in this country, and that is a fucking shame, right? That is not something that we should just be okay with. And so, can you argue in good faith that maybe there are some people who would jump up at the opportunity? Maybe, because we have literally hundreds of thousands of people unhoused in this country. Millions of people don't even have a health insurance in this country. And so, yeah, you probably can find some poor, desperate souls who might be willing to do that. But that's not an argument in your favor. Sorry.
And the desperation, and also, the ideology that's driven into people from birth about this, atomization and individualization, and we don't live in a society, it's just a bunch of individuals, and we have to do the best. We have to have an ethic of greed. That's what the capitalists want us to do. And that is not a good human-centered ethic, I don't think. Centering your worldview around greed, I don't think is good.
It's not, but it makes sense, right? It makes sense that we would have a culture that elevates greed and individualism and selfishness because we have a socioeconomic system that is literally predicated on one prime directive, which is the private pursuit of profit. Okay, so that's what that logic is what undergirds the entire system in which we live in, private profit. So it's no surprise that we would have a culture that reflects that and elevates greed. But my message to this person here is you don't have to accept that. You don't have to be a part of that.
Yeah. I would also challenge the notion that there are actually so many people who would be willing to take the place of all these 160,000 actors because, like we said earlier in the program, a lot of these actors, most of them, 87% of them, make less than $26,000 a year. And therefore, they have to work 2 and 3 and 4 other jobs.
So there's actually not that many people volunteering to do that. And I think it's probably reflected in the fact that how many folks try that kind of career and
then
wash out of it.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily because of a lack of talent, but because it's just not a very ideal situation, and it's just not going to work for a lot of folks.
Yeah, it's not a cakewalk, in fact, to be an actor, despite, the fact that some actors make good money, which is even not the majority of them. But okay, we can continue.
For independent film over anything that Hollywood is making, I'm so much more inclined to watch a verite-style film. There's artifice and verite. Artifice is your Avengers, Jurassic Park. Verite is like Schindler's List, Lady Bird, Nightcrawler, all grounded movies, not big on
all
special
union
effects.
movies.
It's not a high budget. For me, I want movies and shows that have intimacy with the audience, like The Bear on Hulu, or Mr. In Between, also on Hulu. Freaking Succession, dude. I have the word verite tattooed on my arm. I want to make movies that portray life for what it is, no matter how comedic or tragic, and that usually doesn't take a big budget. So pardon me, but I'm going to get to work.
Yeah. Really gross stuff there from that guy. And you can imagine it was not received very well. He got lots of stitches and lots of comments, trying to educate him about why scabbing is bad, solidarity is good, all of this kind of stuff, and also how a lot of those projects that he mentioned are union projects.
Right. I believe that the vast majority of the artists that are walking out also want to connect with the audience, right? Also want to make quality art that people would want to tattoo on themselves. I think that's probably a pretty wide felt perception, right? That they are trying to do good work and create good art. So yeah, what that has to do with being a scab, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah. Okay, so he responded to the second round of much more intense criticism, if you can imagine, in an even worse way. Let's play that.
I just got a potentially life-changing phone call. I got a message this morning from a guy at a company who said, hey, we would love to develop and fund a TV show starring you meaning me. His wife is the CEO, and apparently she... I'm going to be quoted in the New York Times for what I've been saying on here. So, I wanted to come on here and apologize for stating myself so poorly. A lot of my information was not even correct.
Okay, so you can see here it's got the super standard YouTube apology video up, but I missed a TikTok in between there, and so you just heard a little bit of what we just played was the first one actually. We started with the second one.
Yeah.
And then there's a third one that apparently I missed, and this that we have on the screen right now is the fourth one. Okay, so this is kind of convoluted, but the thing that we missed was where he responded to the second round of backlash by saying that that's where he said, I'll be the leader of the scabs. I don't care if I'm banned from Hollywood, and Hollywood doesn't know who they're messing with. because not only are they going up against me, get this, Adam, do you know who else he has on his side?
Who?
God.
Oh. That was my next guess.
Not only going to get up against this guy, he's got God on his side.
The Lord.
The Lord. His Lord and Savior is going to help him scab and defeat Hollywood, was what he said. And
I'm gonna pray for him.
Yeah, and he talked about how the company that reached out to him is Christian but not preachy, and conservative but not Republican. And that's perfect, he says. So, yeah, kind of weird stuff there. But okay, so after that, his management team very obviously talked to him and was like, dude, you gotta stop this. You're not doing good here. This is not going to be good for the film when it comes out.
Right.
So you gotta stop. And so this is the result. This is his apology video.
Yeah, it's never a good sign when you've got to make this video.
I'm going to be quoted in the New York Times for what I've been saying on here. So, I wanted to come on here and apologize for stating myself so poorly. A lot of my information was not even correct. And I would go from making one point to making a whole other point even in the same few sentences, and I'm really sorry for that. I don't like that I do that. Because I fully stand with the unions and their strikes against the corporate greed that is inside of Hollywood. Hollywood's gatekeeping and...
Wait a second. Is he a hostage somewhere? Boy, he has changed his tune a little bit. Like, somebody got a hold of him.
Yeah, what you can't see... Yeah, what you can't see off camera is Sean O'Brien is holding a shotgun to like his child or something.
Yeah, there's about 25 UMWA and UAW and Teamsters just hanging out right there by him, watching to see what he'll say.
Yep.
Monopolizing the whole industry has to be counteracted in some way. Striking is the best, the loudest, and the most efficient way to do that. To have their unfair...
Okay, so... here we go. This is all so far. It's pretty good. We're, again, about to take a turn, though. Get ready for it.
Their treatment be heard, that is the way. But what I also support is independent film. For example, Mel Gibson, no matter what you think of him, funded The Passion of the Christ back in 2003 with $45 million of his own money. It was the highest grossing rated R film up until Deadpool. I understand that he made that money, that he funded it with union money, absolutely. But if the writers and actors push their own productions through the wheel, think of the power that they would hold on top of the power that they already have with the strikes. The TV show that I hope to develop is non-union. I should have clarified myself that I am non-union as well. Taking union jobs from union workers is not my intent. It's not what I'm doing. I'm taking a non-union job, and to my understanding, that is not crossing the picket line fence. That is not scabbing. Unless you want to condemn anybody that takes work during a strike, but I don't see how you can do that. I can't even promise you that the company would go to union actors even if the strikes were not happening right now. Once again, I am so sorry for the confusion that I started. If I don't plan out and think ahead of what I'm going to say, I articulate myself so poorly, and I think that's really unfortunate. New York Times and Rolling Stone are going to quote me now. So I wanted to come on here and state my stance a little bit more clearly because I did such a bad job at that. So anyways, I hope that we understand each other a little bit better. Peace, everybody.
Well,
all right.
There you go. As idol is Mel Gibson. That's his...
Blink twice. Blink 3 times if you're not okay.
Yeah.
Something that's really weird. I'm not sure where you find these people, Jacob. You know, you bring these people to me, and it just reminds me, like, oh, yeah, there's a reason why I try to stay off these corners of the internet. Yeah, but unfortunately, you know, I can't forget that. It just happened, and... here we are. That poor guy, you know, he's going to be quoted in the New York Times. And I bet you that's not exactly what he envisioned when someone, you know, if someone had told him, like, hey, man, you're going to be in the New York Times soon. It's probably not what he thought.
Yeah, definitely not. And really the funny thing is
this the finding out stage that the kids talk about,
yes.
you know?
He is finding out. He is sowing after he had so much fun reaping. Now he is
Right.
sowing. And really the funny thing is that none of this had to happen because it does sound like some,
Like he
random
totally is not related to this.
Right. Some random, independent Christian production company that is, not under the AMPTP agreements or anything.
Right.
So like none of this had to happen. But here we are. And so some other stuff about him came up on my For You page, and apparently this isn't the first time he's had controversy. A while back, he apparently commented on a video of a sexual assault survivor, talking about their story, and his comment was, "Meanwhile, in asterisk, dances provocatively." Apparently commenting on other videos that this creator had.
Wow, that's
and then
pretty messed up.
Yeah, pretty messed up. And he continued, people pushed back against him on that, and he continued to defend himself and say like, people shouldn't people should dress modestly and stuff like that. And I'm not apologizing. So real weird guy. I'm sure that all of our SAG kin are glad that he is not in their union and is not going to be. So there we go. But, Adam, lest you think that literally everybody on TikTok is super weird, I did have another one that is a little bit better. That'll give you a little bit of some hope again for humanity after I just dashed it. So let's take let's take a look at this one.
Our race has already been negotiated. The full-timers, the drivers, we're going to get ours. 42 is not enough, and we're going to get more than that. We're going on strike because the part-timers are only making $16 an hour, and that's unacceptable. And I will stand next to my part-time brothers and sisters and make sure they get theirs on this one too. And I'll sacrifice 2 weeks of work if it has to, because that's what solidarity is. That's what we do. All right. And how the hell do you think we got to 42 anyways? By sitting back and accepting 35? Nah. No. We demanded what was ours, and that's what we're doing now. And 42, that's what it is now. In August, when that contract gets signed, we'll have more than that, and it's going to keep going up every year because their profits go up every year.
There you go. So you feel a little bit better, Adam?
Yeah, I do feel better.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you've got to put that message out there, and I appreciate that, brother, for doing that.
Yeah, really good stuff. So we've taken you on a roller coaster of what TikTok has to offer, and that's exactly the right message about why people strike. Not because here's another here's something else. Not literally, not every single thing is about you, right? As an individual, sometimes we do sacrifice for others. Sometimes we sacrifice for the greater good. Sometimes we do for one another, and we should, and that's how we create a better society. So that's really, really appreciate that as a package car driver. Him being a package car driver, putting that message out there. Talking about we've got it good. We're gonna get it better, but even more than that. The other people who work at UPS need more, and I'm willing to stand up for them, not just for myself, but for them too. And so that's, really, really a great message.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So, Adam, something else that happened last week is a bunch of union workers and members met with President Biden and Bernie Sanders in the White House, right? And Bernie sent out an email about it, didn't he?
He did, yeah. And I wanted to talk about that, and I also had a couple IATSE stories to get to as well, because my union, IATSE, has been impacted, by some of these struggles going on in the entertainment industry. But first, let me mention this email that Bernie Sanders sent out this week. He met with President Biden and various labor leaders, right? They had Starbucks workers, a minor league baseball player, a Sega video game worker, a Bluebird electric bus manufacturing worker from Georgia, a Yale University graduate student chemist, and a worker at eBay subsidiary TCG Player. So really cool to see that happening. And I just want to quote a little bit from this message that Senator Sanders sent out because I think it connects well with a lot of the themes of the show today. Quote, "To my mind, at this moment in history, there is nothing more important than bringing working people together in the fight against corporate greed and oligarchy. And the very good news on that front is that all across the country, in every sector of the economy, we are seeing a major resurgence in labor organizing. Workers today understand that at a time when corporate profits are at an all-time high and the wealth of the billionaire class continues to soar, it is unacceptable that half of our people live paycheck to paycheck and millions cannot afford the basic necessities of life. They are standing together in saying enough is enough, that it's time working people finally got their fair share. That is exactly why unions today are fighting back against corporate greed more aggressively and with the kind of strength we have not seen in several decades. We are seeing it at UPS, where the International Brotherhood of Teamsters are demanding a fair contract, wages, and benefits from a corporation which made $13 billion in profits last year. We are seeing it at the big three car manufacturers, Ford, Stellantis, and General Motors, who have made $250 billion over the past decade, where United Auto Workers are fighting for better working conditions and a fair increase in wages. We're seeing it on college campuses all across the country, where tens of thousands of graduate student workers are fighting back against ruthless exploitation on the job by their very wealthy universities. We're seeing it in Hollywood too, where the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild of America are on strike against the big film studios and powerful executives as their industry continues to undergo rapid and transformational change. We're seeing this kind of action nationwide. Working people from all backgrounds and walks of life courageously taking on corporate greed, coming together in solidarity to fight for dignity, respect, and economic justice on the job. This is what a grassroots political revolution is all about, but the question we face now is, where do we go from here? It will not surprise you to hear that in America today, the deck is very much stacked against working people trying to form a union. With corporate consolidation in the ownership class, workers are trying to take on incredible concentrations of power and wealth. Despite the incredible popularity of everything the labor movement is fighting for, major corporations deploy every union-busting trick in the book to stop their workers from organizing on the job. Workers are often subjected to highly illegal threats, coercion, or even fired for their efforts. Corporations bring in highly paid union-busting consultants and lawyers and do anything and everything to keep from providing their workers with decent wages, benefits, and working conditions. This is why, now more than ever, our movement must stand together in this fight. It's why, as the chairman of the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, proud that we recently passed the PRO Act out of committee, landmark legislation which would make it easier for workers to organize and revitalize the labor movement in this country. The economic and political future of our country rests upon one very simple principle: the need for working people to stand together in the fight against corporate greed and create an economy that works for all of us and not just billionaires and large corporations. I'm proud of the remarkable progress our movement has made and important victories we've won, but there's still an incredible amount of work ahead of us. Let us move forward together and get it done. In solidarity, Bernie Sanders. So really appreciate that statement and sort of connecting these dots and tying these struggles together. I appreciate that message.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned there are several IATSE stories, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to keep people posted on what's going on with IATSE because we've heard about the writers, we've heard about the actors, but let's not forget about the behind-the-scenes production crew, right? I'm talking the stagehands, I'm talking the hair and makeup artists, I'm talking the loaders, the riggers, the lighting crew, all the other folks that help make live production happen, right? So the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, or IATSE, is a labor union representing over 168,000 technicians, artisans, and craft persons in the entertainment industry, including live events, motion picture and television production, broadcast, and trade shows in the United States and Canada. I'm proud to be a member of Local 900 here in Huntsville, where I serve as political coordinator. And we do the behind-the-scenes production work at the Von Braun Center in downtown Huntsville, as well as the new Orion Amphitheater. And I'll be there tonight, working with my sisters and brothers for a country music show. So really, in Huntsville, we have not seen that direct impact from these strikes, but we did come pretty close with an issue I'll tell you about here in a second. But the biggest ways in which IATSE has been impacted, of course, would be in areas closer to the productions that are actually being shut down, right? So my sisters and brothers who live in Hollywood and New York and parts of Georgia where a lot of movie production happens, other areas like that. And so members of IATSE have certainly been impacted by the SGA and WGA strikes. We've seen our members lose work because there are productions that are shut down. We've also seen our members display remarkable solidarity and refusing to cross picket lines, joining rallies with our writer and actor Ken, and even showing up for the Teamsters as they rally and practice picket and prepare for this battle underway. And so really proud of my union and proud to see my union Ken out there fighting alongside these other workers in this struggle. I'm going to quote here from our international president who did release a statement regarding the actor and writer strike. Quote, "In the face of an industry-wide crisis, I want to unequivocally voice the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees' stalwart support for striking entertainment workers in SAG-AFTRA and the Writers Guilds. The actors and writers' cause is reasonable and just and is part of the same struggles of every worker whose labor powers America's film and television industry. The heartbeat of entertainment is the creativity and dedication of working people using their talents and skills to bring cherished stories to life. It is this very heartbeat the studios threaten to silence with reckless disregard for fairness and human artistry. The urgency of this moment cannot be overstated. Our industry is at a crossroads, and the actions taken now will affect the future of labor relations in Hollywood and beyond. The world and history are watching as entertainment workers once again take on the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, AMPTP, an ensemble of media mega corporations collectively worth trillions of dollars, including Amazon, Apple, Disney, Netflix, Universal, Warner Brothers, and others. I am disturbed by the studio's weak attempts to divide and conquer union members across our industry in recent days. The economic fallout for below-the-line crew members is real, but IATSE members know the studios were responsible for shutting down film and television production months before their negotiations with the writers and actors even started. Make no mistake, if the studios truly cared about the economic fallout of their preemptive work slowdown against below-the-line crew members, they could continue to pay crew members and fully fund their health care at any moment, as they did in 2020 during the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Instead, grassroots groups of writers, actors, and directors, like the Union Solidarity Coalition, are stepping up to fund mutual aid that directly benefits our members, and I recognize them for organizing this much-needed support. It's plain as day who our allies are. We stand shoulder to shoulder with our SAG-AFTRA and Writers Guild kin. Their fight today foreshadows our fight tomorrow, and we must stand united until the studios acknowledge our collective worth and the workers prevail. In solidarity, Matthew D. Loeb, International President of IATSE. So I wanted to highlight that and kind of where my union stands in terms of these broader entertainment industry struggles. It's worth noting that the Pink contract became kind of a flashpoint this week. Negotiations between IATSE and the Broadway League, as well as Disney Theatrical, they really had broken down, and on Wednesday there was an announcement of a strike authorization vote, and then wouldn't you know it, on Thursday morning a tentative agreement was reached. Now, I don't know all the details of the tentative agreement. I don't know if anything changed last minute, or what changes may have taken place. I don't think it's a coincidence that after negotiations break down and then there's a strike authorization announcement, that suddenly there's an agreement reached the next day. But, we'll see. We'll see. But this is the Pink contract. So, like I said, it involves the Broadway League and Buena Vista Theatrical, which does business as Disney Theatrical. And this is a big deal because obviously these shows go on tour, and so this would have impacted not just folks literally on Broadway, but all over the country as these shows travel. And so good news, I think, that we've got a tentative agreement there. We'll stay tuned on the details, and hopefully next week have a little bit more information to bring you about that. And this comes on the heels of a ratification of the bus and truck touring agreement, which did secure some key improvements for the crews. And the bus and truck touring agreement passed with an overwhelming 86% of votes cast in favor. So that's a big win. I take that as a sign that the agreement must have, made some important progress on some key issues there. The negotiations were very, very challenging. And, it looked like for a while that, productions could be shut down this fall. So glad that there's an agreement there as well. The ratified agreement includes crucial improvements such as single occupancy housing, which is a critical change from previous terms requiring touring crew members to share rooms. The agreement also includes additional compensation for moving shows between cities more than twice per week, and for load-ins on the same day as a matinee performance. A breakthrough has also been made with an increase in guaranteed rest days. This new addition addresses a long-standing issue where workers often went weeks and even months without a day off. Furthermore, the agreement improves financial stability for members by increasing annuity contributions on the lowest tier and enabling workers to self-contribute to their own annuity. These hard-fought improvements have been won in the face of repeated threats by the employers to cancel the upcoming fall season. Yet bargaining team members remained committed to fighting for the well-being of their fellow kin and the sustainability of touring theater. So, good news there. And my final announcement for IATSE is that the union is currently doing a 2023 member census. This vital initiative aims to gain accurate, anonymous, and aggregated statistics about the union's membership across the U.S. and Canada. By inviting every IATSE member to participate, the census will empower the union to better advocate for our members' rights and interests and ensure future actions reflect the union's membership. In our commitment to accuracy and integrity, we've partnered with the Worker Institute at Cornell University's School of Industrial and Labor Relations, ILR, to lead the endeavor. And their reputable expertise guarantees the utmost care in the survey, data collection, and analysis. And I just really want to encourage all IATSE members who may listen to this, may hear this, to be on the lookout in your email for that survey. I think it's really important that we all participate. And if you want some more information, just go to iatse.net/publications. That's where you can find some of these updates I pulled this information from, including the one about the census, and you can find some background information there if you're really curious. And that's all I've got for the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. I appreciate the opportunity to provide some updates.
Absolutely. And did you get did I miss the local stuff? Maybe you talked about that, and I zoned out for a second.
No, you're good. You're good. No, I'm good. I just wanted to mention that I am a member of Local 900.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said that there was maybe some local news, and maybe I missed.
No. We thought we might have some local news if the pink contract, had not gone well, if there had been a strike over that, or if the bus and truck touring contract, either one, if either one had gone south and there had been a strike, obviously that would have shut down productions all over the country, including, here in town. So, we're all thankful that, some agreements have been reached that are hopefully are positive for the members and keep folks at work.
Good deal. Okay. Let's talk about Starbucks for a second. And we announced a couple of weeks ago that an administrative law judge with the NLRB ordered Starbucks to reopen a store in Ithaca, New York, after it had determined that it closed the store, not for business reasons, but in retaliation to the workers there organizing. Ithaca, importantly, was the first city in the United States where every single Starbucks store in the city unionized. And so this presented a very big issue for Starbucks, very concerning, potentially precedent setting. And so they were even more motivated in this city than maybe in others to try to squash any union attempts and organized workers. So not only did they close the store that they were ordered to reopen, but they closed every single store in Ithaca. Those cases are still working their way up the chain with those other two stores. It's only the one store right now that has been ordered to reopen, but they have closed every single other store in the city. So this is, if you hear that they've closed every single store in the city, I mean, the only rational thing to think is that they did that in retaliation. There's you can't have an ounce of critical thinking skills or be speaking in good faith and believe otherwise, I don't think.
Just common sense.
Common sense. But the Wall Street Journal editorial board disagrees, if you can imagine that.
Well, common sense ain't always so common.
So the Wall Street editorial board really went in on the NLRB, saying that they were discriminating against Starbucks and targeting them for their...
Wait, discriminating?
Yeah. For their use of... for their reasonable application of business reasons, and they state that lots of stores close every year, lots of stores open every year. You can't say that it was because of union animus towards union activity. And, and so a prominent barista in the Starbucks Workers United Union, Casey Moore, on Twitter, really broke down the article and destroyed their arguments, I think, really thoroughly. And, that's one more example under the idea that having a fancy job or a law degree or a political science degree or whatever, working in a fancy institution like the Wall Street Journal, does not mean that you are a very logical thinker or that you are privy to the way that the law works or anything like that.
Meritocracy is a myth, and particularly when it comes to these media institutions. They're not always sending their best, folks.
Yeah, they are not sending their best.
And I don't know about you, Jacob. I mean, you're a little bit younger than me, but certainly in my life, I've experienced a lot of people with a lot more money than me and a lot less sense and a lot less brain power. The two don't always have to be correlated.
Exactly. Meritocracy is a myth. We shouldn't believe in it, and this story is illustrative of that fact. So, Casey Moore, like I said, at Union Casey on Twitter, she broke down some of this article, and she started it with, "This may be the most idiotic article covering the Starbucks campaign I've ever read," a thread. And she opens her arguments showing how the editorial board, just kind of summarizing their argument. The Wall Street editorial board essentially argues that Starbucks is somehow being unfairly, quote, targeted by the NLRB because they are being forced to reopen a store that the company claims was closed for, quote, business reasons, end quote, and not in retaliation for union activities. She says that this argument is incredibly flawed and lazy for many reasons. In the article, the authors admit that Starbucks only closed the College Avenue store after workers went on strike over health and safety problems. A quote from the article, the problems bubbled over when employees decided to walk off the job until the grease trap was fixed. Management fixed the leak the same weekend, but decided that staff troubles and the possibility of future leaks were enough to merit a closure. Starbucks locations are closed for much less cause almost every day. The cafe giant shuttered 424 stores in 2021, and nearly as many opened. The chain closed 2 other stores in Ithaca last year, but hundreds of unionized Starbucks remain open. And she points out that what the authors conveniently fail to mention is that the grease trap issue, it's not just something that sprung up. It had been an issue at the store for years. And only after the store unionized and went on strike about it did Starbucks give a single shit about it. That's when they started caring, according to Casey. And then she comes with receipts saying, "How do we know this? In the ULP trial, we got to see emails between Starbucks executives and local management talking about the store not meeting the Starbucks, quote, brand needs after the strike, despite having fixed the issue, ostensibly. And also despite, they're saying we closed it because of this grease trap issue, but the grease trap issue had been present, like she said, for years."
Right.
Second, according to Casey, what this article fails to mention is that Ithaca was the first city in the United States to unionize every Starbucks in the city. This terrified Starbucks, and they did everything possible to retaliate against their own workers and make their lives a living hell. For instance, the Wall Street Journal editorial board fails to mention that in the same administrative law judge decision, where the judge orders Starbucks to reopen the College Avenue store, the judge also found Starbucks guilty of illegally firing workers, of retaliating against workers, of changing policies illegally, and more. The company didn't stop there, according to Casey. After illegally closing the College Avenue store last summer, Starbucks decided to close every store in Ithaca this spring, citing, again, business reasons. Now, the Wall Street she says that the Wall Street Journal editorial board, of course, knows this, but didn't think it was relevant to Starbucks' clearly bullshit claims. Would the Wall Street Journal also take Starbucks' word that the remaining 2 Ithaca stores were closed for business reasons in a city with over 25,000 students as customers? Also, she says, to claim that many union stores remain open is not a valid line of reasoning to argue that Starbucks didn't illegally close a union store. Of course, it's just a red herring. It doesn't make any sense. It would be as if, like I punched somebody and they take me to court over it, and instead of talking about the allegations of did you punch him or did you not, I cite all of these days in which I did not punch this person, right? Like, look at this. I went an entire month without punching this person. So surely that means that I didn't do it on this time.
And also, it's like, do we really need to dig into the data on the store closures and how disproportionately they tend to be on the union side, right? I mean, if they want to open up that can of worms.
Yeah. So no, Wall Street Journal editorial board, this closure did not look like a reasonable business judgment to anyone with a brain or even a shred of critical thinking skills. Instead of writing an article with half-formed and easily disprovable arguments, the Wall Street Journal editorial board should have just stated their point simply. They believe that companies should be able to legally retaliate against workers by closing stores that organize.
Right. And that's exactly what I told you when we were discussing this earlier this week, is that if the Wall Street Journal came right out and said, hey, we love property rights and capitalists so much that we think these capitalists should have the right to do this. They should have the right to just shut down the production and close the whole store and to retaliate against unionization. If they just were honest about that, I would respect it a little bit more than trying to insult people's intelligence. Because I think it's pretty obvious what's going on, and to imply otherwise, I feel like you're talking down to me, and I don't much appreciate that. At least be honest about the fact that you are a bootlicker. Just be honest about that, and we'll deal with that. But I don't like it either. It's the Wall Street Journal. It's garbage. It's garbage, and I do appreciate this worker for really clearing up the issue and laying out the facts about what's really going on here. And I just really am inspired by the Starbucks workers and what they're doing, and I really appreciate what they're doing. And I think about some of these really young folks, young as 16 at the Scottsboro store, who are taking on this corporation who is just bound and determined to fight their own partners every step of the way. It's sickening. It's really sickening. And I don't know how some of these people in Starbucks management sleep at night.
Yeah, she closes with, unfortunately for Starbucks and the Wall Street Journal editorial board, that's not how labor law works. The facts remain clear. Starbucks illegally closed the College Avenue store, and they will have to reopen it as a remedy for their actions. That's another thing. There are so many people like this that are like, this is America. If you don't like it, then go live in Venezuela or something, right? And this, this is one of those times where, we live in America. The National Labor Relations Act is, for now, under this, reactionary, illegitimate, I think, Supreme Court, it is for now the law of the land. And if you don't like it, you can leave. That's my take. I think that's going to wrap it up for us today, right?
Sure, yeah. I did want to go over our plugs before we head out of here, because there are a few different events I wanted to highlight. And just a reminder that we also air on Unclaimed Mysteries Radio, which is a Huntsville-based internet radio station. You can listen on Live 365. Just search Unclaimed Mysteries Radio. And so, as they do each month, our friends at Labor Notes are hosting a series of online trainings. If you're looking to learn how to get involved in your union or activism in general, I highly recommend you check them out. Jacob mentioned earlier about the Caucus How-To event on August 9th, but they have a few others coming up, and that includes on Tuesday, August 1st. That evening, they're going to do What to Do When Your Union Breaks Your Heart. If you never saw the episode of Shop Talk a few weeks back with Ellen David Friedman, we actually talked about that. She's the one who does that session. She came on Shop Talk. We talked about that and some other subjects. But it's a really good training session. So especially those of you who, have experienced some negative things in our labor movement, it might be worth your time. And something else I want to point out with Labor Notes is they're doing Race and Labor in August. It's 2 sessions on Saturday, August 5th, and then Saturday, August 12th. And they are going to be, unfortunately, at the same time as the show. So I won't be participating, but I definitely think it will be worth your time. So if you're a person who listens after the show comes out already, right? If you're listening live, then we'd still love to have you on next Saturday live. But for everyone else, definitely encourage you to check out this Race and Labor session from Labor Notes. It's an online workshop held through Zoom. How does racism show up in our workplaces and our unions? What are some strategies to confront it and build solidarity for a stronger multiracial labor movement? And what can you say to union siblings who aren't convinced racial justice has anything to do with union politics? So that is a very important session, I believe. And on top of all that, they are going to have their Secrets of a Successful Organizer workshop series, and that'll be starting August 14th. So just go to labornotes.org/events to find out more information there. As we mentioned earlier in the show, the Creative Arts Youth Summer Camp on Wednesday, July 26th. Really think that's a neat idea. There's a lot of different groups involved with it, it's my understanding. But one thing that I really liked is I found out that CWA 3905 Union Steward Joseph Barker is going to be teaching a cooking class for the little kiddos, and I just love that. So search Facebook for the event. Consider bringing your little ones if you have them. So way to go, Joseph, and CWA 3905 for this really cool way to uplift the community. I think that's a great idea. And, you know, anytime your unions are doing things like that and you're really giving back to the community, or, you know, giving back in any sort of way, let us know. We'd love to highlight it. We'd love to promote your events, but we'd also just love to tell that story. Because we know our unions are out here in the community doing a lot of good work and doing really neat things like this. And, you know, I just happened to come across this. There's other stuff happening, I'm sure, and we'd love to talk about it. So next, I also wanted to mention the AFL-CIO is hosting its Injury to All campaign immigrant worker protections training, July 25th, 12 to 2 p.m. Central Time through Zoom. So just go online to the AFL-CIO to find out more. The session will provide a step-by-step overview of the process through which unions and organizers can help workers access temporary immigration status protections and work permits. Very relevant considering the conversations we've been having today about immigrant labor and child labor in this country. On July 27th, that's Thursday, July 27th, is a webinar from Just Solutions called Economic Drivers of Climate Vulnerability and Resilience. So it's going to be Thursday afternoon. Join us for part 1 of the Perfect Storm of Extraction, Poverty, and Climate Change webinar series. In this webinar, we will explore the real-world economic conditions that constrain the capacity of frontline communities to cope with, prepare for, and respond to climate change. Hear from the authors of Just Solutions' recent report, The Perfect Storm of Extraction, Poverty, and Climate Change, a framework for assessing vulnerability, resilience, adaptation, and a just transition in frontline communities, followed by a panel discussion featuring experts in the field working on solutions to these issues. So, sounds interesting coming up this week. Alabama Rise has restarted its Town Hall Tuesdays. You just missed it on July 18th when they did Building on Our Vision to discuss advances we made this year and to hear from each other about potential issues moving forward. But no worries, if you missed that one, August 8th at 6 p.m. is Building on Our Hope. So go to alarise.org to register for these online town halls. And don't forget to check out our series called Shop Talk, which airs on Thursdays, typically at 9:30 a.m. Central Time, but we are going to be retooling that. Things are going to be changing with Shop Talk to accommodate some changes in my schedule. So probably starting in August, what we're going to be doing is pre-recording the episodes for various reasons, but mostly just to ensure consistent quality and consistent release, because I think that's important. And, you know, when we record things live, obviously there's more opportunities for goofs and little accidents and mishaps, especially when it's just me by myself in the studio recording Shop Talk. So we are going to be moving to pre-recorded episodes. Not super sure on the timing of when we're going to be releasing those just yet. We'll definitely keep you all posted on that. We think it's important to have a special series of episodes that are dedicated to labor education, history, and training. But it's just something we're going to have to retool a little bit, and definitely appreciate any feedback that y'all have about it. And last thing I have is just to encourage folks to, again, check out our website, TVLR.fm, sign up for our email newsletter, and you can stay in touch with the show. And And in closing, again, I wanted to send my love and sympathy and solidarity to the family of Devon Robert Thomas Perez, who was 16 years old and died needlessly in a poultry plant in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And so that's all I have, Jacob.
All right. Well, with that, we are going to go ahead and roll out. Appreciate your time. If you have, if you've got anything you want to ask us, you want to contribute to the show, you can leave us a voicemail.
Definitely do that. Send us some texts, send us some voicemails.
844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also send us a text message like Adam said. You can pre-order our new redesigned Join a Union shirt at tvlr.fm/store. If you would like to become a monthly donor, tvlr.fm/donate. We would really appreciate it. Thanks again, and we will see you next week.